Okay, guys, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Dungeon Musings YouTube channel. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be your Dungeon Muser today. Today, we are going to be doing something a little special. We are down a player for our regular Star Trek campaign, so we are going to take the opportunity to revisit an old favorite of mine. If you're familiar with my podcast, you've heard me yap about this game before. The Generic Universal Role-Playing System, GURPS, published by Steve Jackson. This is the 4th edition, the current edition of the game, but it is a game that dates back to the mid-'80s. And the reason that we're going to be playing GURPS today is because I have been chatting up GURPS quite heavily to two of our stars joining us today. Those would be Arlen and James. So what I've decided to do is I put together an adventure today that would hopefully highlight some of the strengths of the GURPS system, some of the possibilities of what you can do with it, and then also to have to show how much fun you can have with this particular game. For those who are unfamiliar with it, the Generic Universal Role-Playing System, or GURPS, I'm going to say GURPS going forward because it's a mouthful. GURPS was designed to basically be your one-stop shop for any kind of role-playing games. It is at its core 3d6 roll under dice mechanic, and then it is effects are usually a series of d6s. It only ever uses d6s. The game is quite lethal if you're playing it as written, if you're running just a combat game, but there are a lot of other aspects to the characters that you go through or that come out in the course of creating a character that make for a much more robust game than maybe at first glance you might suspect. That's sort of the pitch that I gave to James and to Arlen, and we're going to see if there's any proof in that pudding. And then joining us as well is Jeff, who has kindly returned, first off, returned from his vacation, which is great, and he is currently suffering through a Snowmageddon in his hometown. So,
oh yeah, it's crazy out there.
So let's set the stage first. I guess for those listening at home, what this session is going to be: part role playing, part talking about roles, part talking about why I made certain decisions with characters. So it's going to be a bit of an instructional, session as well, because it's been a while since I've run GURPS, to be honest. Jeff, I know I've run GURPS for you before, but I don't know if you've ever made a character in GURPS.
I don't know if I've ever made an actual character myself, no.
No. And then James and Arlen, you guys have not played GURPS before at all.
Nope.
Okay, cool.
Nope.
So then it's going to be, we'll be using this session to kind of go through. And for the setting for this session, I decided to mash up two of my absolute favorite settings for GURPS. And let's see if I got the second book here. Oh, I do. I'm mashing up... for 3rd edition, GURPS had this reputation of publishing just a shit ton of books, and turns out that the books are amazing for resource materials. One of my favorites, this is the 2nd edition of GURPS Cliffhangers for playing pulp adventures in the 30s, and GURPS Atomic Horror for playing campaigns based around 50 sci-fi movies. So, flying saucers and people in bobble helmets and stuff like that. Our setting is something I'm calling Atomic Pulp. And the broad strokes of our setting is that in 1889, flying saucers landed in the major capitals or major cities of most every developed nation around the world, and some less developed nations as well, too. When these flying saucers, and these are what you picture as the classic, silver rotating disc kind of things. When these things arrived, they very quickly opened up, and what spilled out, sometimes to peaceful, a reception, sometimes to more violent, were a series of creatures that have come to be known popularly, at least in the English-speaking world, as gray goons. They were called Goonies at first, and goons, and that name sort of stuck. The Grey Goons, it seems, had been afflicted by some kind of disease or some other thing that dramatically decreased their intelligence, because what came out of these saucers were a race of servile, beings that were clearly not intelligent enough to be able to design or operate or move these vessels. So the what do you call it? The nations of Earth over time managed to gain access to these vessels. Their finest minds studied these things, and over time began to incorporate the goons into and their technology, sometimes modified, sometimes not, into society. The effect that this dramatic event had on philosophy, on theology, on humans' belief of their place in the world is really not the concern of this tale. What is the concern of this tale is that the war to end all wars and the other conflicts still proceeded as happened in our history. The Boer War was still fought. The Opium Wars were still fought. Which I actually think predate that. The countries that seceded or left colonies still did, though more and more nations began to incorporate what they called Goonie gear into their armies. And these are, you can picture, the kind of crazy technology that you had from like 50 sci-fi. So like ray guns that have like lots of weird like circular things on the end that make that like ooh kind of sound. They are, and then since the Great War proved to be an opportunity to spurn creativity, and since the Great War ended in 1914, it seems as if suddenly there has been a wash of creativity and insight into the Goonie technology, and more of it is being incorporated into Western society. Unfortunately, so like elsewhere in the world did not have the technological kind of and industrial underpinnings to be able to produce this stuff. But as we passed into the 30s, we saw more and more of this technology incorporated into our world in this kind of, the way I was describing it to the guys is if you can picture, steampunk kind of sensibilities with a 50s sci-fi or 50s automobile perspective where everything's got these clean lines and so it's not unusual to see the atomic men or atomic clockworks making their way through the downtown of New York, or dirigibles that incorporate some of the technology taken from the Goonies, weaponry that is being dramatically expanded. Medical sciences have unfortunately not, the technology did not necessarily provide additional insight into the human body, but what it did do is provide a wealth of inventive new ways of dealing with the catastrophic injuries suffered during the Great War, including loss of limbs. But where our story starts is in 1936. And in 1936, I should say as well too, the goons have effectively become a labor, a labor class. They're the total population of what was in a kind of cryosleep and aboard these vessels. It seems as if the vessels when they landed were automated to let people out. So there's now a third generation of goons that are living in some nations. Some nations just killed all of them, but most nations, recognize them as, while not particularly bright, they have like effectively the functioning level of something along the lines of like a chimp or a dolphin, as far as things, or like a very, very, very well trained dog, but they don't express a lot of creativity. They're good at following instructions and being able to extrapolate what they need to do. They make for a good domestic class effectively. Some might speculate as well that it's almost as if they try to please, but it's a mystery as to where they came from. It's a mystery as to why they are the way they are. There were some panics at the time, of the idea that there was going to be a gray influenza that was going to spread around and that people would be affected the same way. That proved to be nothing. So where we find ourselves, though, is in we're going to say the late fall, the late autumn of 1936. And our scene will open in 1936 in Barcelona. Of course, in 1936 is when the Spanish Civil War between the Republicans and the various groups opposing effectively the fascist regime and all the rest. Now, our heroes. Well, let's do this actually first. Let's talk about who our characters are. So, guys, why don't you tell us who you are and who you're playing today? We'll start with you, James.
So I'm Two Gun Bob. I'm ex-soldier in the Benjamin Franklin Brigade, along with the other guys. I'm short-tempered, overconfident, bloody-minded, ex-soldier who still feels great brotherhood to his two comrades in arms, and upholds his views of what a soldier should be and how straight he should be.
Nice.
And his prized possession is a Goonie gun that he used in the Civil War.
Yeah. So, and next is Jeff.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeff, and I'm playing E.A. Blair. He is a war correspondent and sort of a know-everybody kind of guy, a little bit of an alcoholic, and extremely curious and obsessed by nature.
Nice. And last but not least is Arlen.
Hi, I'm Arlen. I'm playing Joaquin Smith Sterling, who's a sort of younger, kind of a more of a sensitive artist type, but who's doing his best to stand against the rise of fascism by fighting in the Benjamin Franklin Brigade. He's going to get kind of messed up by the war, as sometimes happens with these sensitive artist types when they go to war.
Yep.
He's too young to have fought in the Great War, so he's got this kind of misplaced sense of what all of that meant, for 20 years ago. But he's doing his best to live out his kind of, stand against fascism.
Yeah. And
so if we average out JSS and Two Gun, do we get an averagely sensitive individual?
Yeah.
Nice. So, what I'm actually going to change my mind. We're gonna fly by the seat of our pants here, guys, and instead we're going to open our scene in Paris, Atomic Paris. And Paris is called Atomic Paris, colloquially, because the following the Great War, one of the efforts that was made to sort of to regain Paris's place as the light of the world was to incorporate the most advanced technology that could be to sort of run this power grid off of Goonie-derived Goonie-derived power systems. If you take a look on the screen here, guys, you've got some idea of what old Gay Paris looks like at this time. Though what you can see, moving through the streets, there are big kind of like atomic labor mechs that are kind of going by. In a lot of cases, the technology hasn't quite figured out how the power source works. They just know that the power is there. So a lot of technology has been developed based on just knowing that you can fuel whatever your imagination can come up with. And you see, there are some of those going by. Overhead, there are, one or two Zeppelins that are setting out for elsewhere in the world. The streets are full of young people, old people sitting at cafes, lovers meeting. But our camera will, as it passes some of the mechanical contraptions, and of course there are goons, gray goons who are on their way to provide their tasks for their various masters. The goons themselves are only about maybe like 4 feet tall, and they look very much like what you can see on the screen here, guys. They have that kind of almost skull-like, nondescript features, and what our camera lands on is it pans across the screen to show everyone sitting at this cafe, And then we see someone sitting with a notepad in front of him with, there is, a pencil that's set to the side. There's a glass with an aperitif in it. But what we see is his hands. In place of human hands, there are these strange mechanical apparati. Or apparatus, that's not a word, apparatus. There are these kind of mechanical contraptions, very similar to what you see in the hands of this robot thing over here. And it's kind of idly tapping on the table. Tack, 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 tack. And then we see them go up, and or I guess they take the glass of the aperitif and raise it to his mouth, and what we can see is it is E.A. Blair. Jeff, your character.
Nice.
Now you're sitting here and enjoying, a lovely fall afternoon. It is 1937, and it is September. For this September, the summer seems to want to push on as long as it can. You know that winter will be coming, and of course there are definitely storm clouds in the horizon, historically speaking, for you. But for now, you and you're sitting at this cafe. It's a cafe you frequent quite often. In fact, if anyone needs to find you, this is often the place they find you. It also is the place where much of the foreign correspondence pool hangs out as well. So you probably, as you're sitting there enjoying your drink, your lunch is brought to you, and you can see, people are walking by and EA, and you're nodding to them, and you're working on something. And I think what you're doing is reviewing your notes, because you will be meeting with first you're going to be supposed to be meeting some friends for lunch, old friends you knew from the war, and then you have an interview scheduled as well too, with a rather unusual guy named Aldous Macon, and Aldous is a member of a French labor organization that is advocating for the rights of goons.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's going to be it's something that it's the first of its kind. Of course, in the 1930s, there are the 1930s are one of those periods in history where huge numbers of people have opened themselves up to different kinds of living, of structuring society in a different way. There's a reason that fascism and communism and those kinds of things swelled up in every country in the world during this time. It's this fertile period of uncertainty and creativity, and Paris seems to be the epicenter of all of that. So
Okay.
it's a phenomenal place for you to be to learn about this stuff, and this is a truly dramatic kind of thing. And then what you see, making his way down the street is or across the plaza to kind of join you is one of your companions for lunch, and that is JSS. Now, I'm picturing, I don't know, Arlen, you know sort of what we've talked about, what his disadvantages are. How do you think he's presenting? This is now less than a year after the events of the events in Barcelona.
I think he looks more than a little scruffy. He's kind of got that particular. He's got that sort of. He's living Bohemian Paris, so he's not quite as clean cut as Blair is, but he's I imagine for work that he's probably doing at least a little bit of writing for newspapers or things like that back home, because that pays a lot better than just writing poetry. So he tries to present himself on Blair's model almost. But
I think he's actually, as much as he is situated in Paris, I think it's probably stories that are paying the bills.
Oh, that's
got,
a good point.
He's got
too.
money,
Yeah.
he's got that, but he's, he gets to have a kind of a foot in two worlds then too. He gets to have a foot in the pulp writing that Two Gun Bob is also involved in, as well as having, sort of a world, access to the phenomenal poets of the, post-war or interwar, I guess, we'll know later, Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So what does he have with him? Does he have his note like books with him, or like a notepad or something like that?
Yeah, I think he's got a sort of a book of poetry sort of tucked into his jacket, and it's one of his personal books of. It's really more of a notebook where he writes both his own poetry and copies down other people's poetry in it. But that's kind of one of his prized possessions. It's clear.
Okay. So yeah, so you and I think that every time you bump into someone too, you have this look as if like an electric jolt has run through you. You know, it seems for EA you've seen this before, but as he's making his way across the crowd, he seems to be very intently trying to avoid running into anyone. Clutching his book and kind of, but the odd time where he does bump into someone too, he kind of, jerks himself back, and then, you manage to finish making your way across the plaza, and you walk up to the cafe table where EA is sitting. And what happens then?
So JSS sort of does not like a full military salute, but it's almost like a false kind of stand at attention and says, "Mr. Blair, for lunch?"
Indeed, JSS. Sit down. He pushes the chair out a little bit for him.
Of course.
So now that what we know for mechanically, we know that both of you guys are unfortunately alcoholics.
Yep.
So I am picturing that you guys are drinking buddies in all likelihood. So JS or EA, you've been kind of nursing this aperitif for some time here now, but now JSS is here. Is it time perhaps for some wine?
Probably.
Okay. So let's do this, guys. So he arrives, and what does EA say to that effect? Like, does he transition over to? I think the waiter likely knows you well enough, so this,
probably it's like a signal to the waiter, and all of a sudden he's bringing over the wine for us.
Yeah. So he walks over, Monsieur, and he's got the little mustache. He's got the white shirt with the black. So what do you call it? Black. Well, actually, very much you can see what they're dressed like in the background there. They got the full, thing, the full black kind of not tuxedo but black suit on with the bow ties. They make their way over and says, "Monsieur, an aperitif, or something stronger."
Something stronger, please.
But of course. And he, as if like he'd had it hidden behind him, he presents the wine menu to you, though of course he knows that you know it backwards and forwards.
Right. Excellent. I'll pick out sort of a usual, either a wine, I guess, or a grappa, or whatever we would be drinking here in Paris.
Sure. Yeah. Either
probably a wine in Paris. Yeah.
Okay. So you get that, and JS, why don't we do this, guys? Let's because you guys have those disadvantages, let's just figure out what consequence they're going to have on you. So why don't each of you give me a will check, please? That'll be on the first tab of your character sheet, and you just click on that, and we'll see who succeeds. Okay, so JSS, you barely.
Barely, yeah.
So you're not going to have to overindulge.
Oh, excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah, of course. EA seems to have succeeded as well too. So you guys start. The wine is brought, and the glasses are set, and you begin to start. Digging into this wine, and basically as he's pouring the wine, and there is 2 other glasses that are set as well too. EA insists on there being 2 other ones. The bottle is set on the table, and then let's switch to, we can see making his way through the crowd. The only thing you missed, Jeff, is that there are 2 other glasses that are set here.
Okay, yeah, right, of course, because the other people are coming.
Yeah, there's 2 other people coming. So you then see Two Gun Bob making his way over, and James, what does it look like as Bob is making his way over?
He's shambling a bit, big bear of a man that he is. So
Yeah.
he catches sight of his 2 old fighting buddies, and it's a wave over there, and picks up pace.
Yep.
get up to the table faster.
Okay. And there's
Well-
one small, Frenchman who kind of gets in your way. You bump into him, and he kind of like, oh, monsieur.
I was like, hey, I'm in a good mood today. I'll leave you alone.
Okay. So you make your way over, and what you see is EA and JSS are, of course, have already, started into the wine. And as you walk up, the waiter looks at you and says, kind of gestures with the wine towards your glass. Monsieur, pour vous?
Ah, pour moi, bit early, huh? I think I'll have a citron pressé for me. My
Oui.
friends are a bit more enthusiastic than me.
So you sit down. I think you probably have a cigarette going or a cigar, depending on what your preference would be. So you sit down. What do you say? Or what happens?
So, boys, what's the meetup today?
Well, actually, because you
I
can
do?
tell there's
Oh.
that fourth glass. This
Aha.
is, you guys, there is an old friend you haven't seen in, since you left Spain. And your old friend is Dr. Henry James. Sorry, Dr. Henry Jones. Jones was another member of the Benjamin Franklin Brigade. Jones came here. He came and served alongside you guys, but he actually went home afterwards. But for about maybe about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, you guys got an urgent telegram saying that he was coming into town and really wanted to meet for lunch, and insisted on this particular cafe.
So we don't know the
so-
part yet about him starting this goons thing or whatever.
No, that's a different person. That is.
That's someone else.
Yeah, that's
okay.
here. I'll tell you here.
Okay.
Aldous Macall is the labor organizer, and Dr. Henry Jones is your old
Friend.
colleague. There you go. That's why you have 4 glasses waiting. You're supposed to be meeting Henry here. So
Right.
you guys sit down, and so
no sign of Doc then, EA. Is he standing
No,
us
not
up?
yet. I'm sure he'll be here.
He always was late.
he did take. I think you subsequently heard he was taking a transatlantic Zeppelin over here, and he should have arrived. You haven't heard from him since he arrived, but this is the way such things go in the 30s. You make those appointments and hope that people can keep them.
Yeah, true.
Though it is strange that he insisted on meeting here rather than letting you know what hotel he was staying at or anything like that.
Right.
Maybe he just knew what EA and JSS would need to keep the conversation flowing.
Okay.
I have faith he'll be here. I'm sure he's just checking into his hotel or dealing with something.
Yeah, fair enough. While we're at it then, I guess I'll join in with that red wine of yours.
Nice.
Absolutely.
All right.
Pours in a nice glass.
So you guys start, you start having your drinks, and you guys reminisce. You guys tell me, do you think that you would reminisce about the time in Barcelona, or do you think you would talk about everything but that? Because I can see arguments for either of them. EA, obviously you, because of your publications, you've spent a lot of time dwelling on those memories, but I can understand why JSS might not want to do that. What do you guys think? Where does the conversation turn?
I think there would be talk of that stuff, but it would be more about, we would probably be talking about the good times, not the horrors of war, but the bonding that happened.
Yeah.
Not about having lost.
Okay. So what you guys are talking about is that time when you guys were fighting the, the fascists, and there was that strange ceasefire that happened, EA, when someone in one of the other brigades found an operating espresso machine. And everyone took time in the middle of the ruins of Barcelona to stop and have an espresso together before the conflict kicked back up again.
Nice.
Yeah. Not sure you've ever had an espresso quite as good as that one.
No, I've yet to find one as good as that day.
Okay. And
The wine sure is nice here in Paris, though. Cheers as friends.
yeah. So neither JSS, because you guys succeeded in your will checks, neither of you has to, go on a bender as a result of this. You're able to sort of keep yourself in, in check, as it were. Why do you think that is?
I think he's just too focused right now on this story with Aldous.
Mm-hmm. And
Not sure about
JS?
I think what kind of helps him with all of this, what the sort of source of recovery for him is through poetry, and so that's part of why he carries his little book around, is so that he can, when he feels the stress is becoming too much, he can try to rely on that instead of losing himself in alcohol or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And the afternoon is pleasant, but 15 minutes turns into a half hour turns into an hour, and you guys finally, at some point are like, well, we'll order. I'm sure Doc will be here. The meals are finished, the plates are removed. The afternoon begins to continues to while on. No sign of Henry.
I'm starting to be slightly worried, gents. Wonder what could have happened to Henry.
Yeah, so when was the last time you'd actually heard direct from him?
That would have been about maybe a week ago. Sorry, forgive me. 2 weeks ago. It would have been 2 weeks ago.
So maybe we should go check at the Zeppelin line, see if he made it across. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The aerodrome.
Sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Okay. So you guys, well, I mean, you of course, EA, have that appointment with Aldous Macon later this afternoon.
Oh, what time is that? Okay.
That'll be after you've scheduled that for the same place. You tend to hold court here, as it were.
Right. Just hang out.
Yeah. And
well, so what time is that? So I have to wait here.
So this so at some point the maitre d', who you know quite well, EA, a gentleman named Paul. He's maybe 40s, a year old or 40s ish man, dressed very much like what the rest of the serving staff are, but he's got this nice kind of big bright what do you call it? Not corsage. What do you call it? The flower in his lapel. And he says, Monsieur Blair, might I have a word?
Of course. I'll step away from the table with him.
Okay, so you guys see him step away, and JSS, you down the last of your glass of wine, and you look at the bottle, which is empty on the table, and you're trying to decide whether, do we do another round? You guys can assume that all of you are sort of that, you're not rich by any means, but you don't have to track money. You've got enough patrons and enough of an income going in that you can kind of keep your lifestyle going. And it's 30s Paris, so I imagine the wine is cheap and easily accessible. Then you feel this sort of strange sensation, JSS, and you look out across the courtyard, and things have been so strange for you since the war. And you can see that the courtyard or the plaza where the cafe opens onto is full of people going back and forth and going about their busy days. Again, you can see There are gray goons going around. There are, contraptions making their way through. There are little hovering, kind of like, imagine a drone, but made in the shape of like an auto gyro. So like a little biplane with a propeller on top that's kind of, moving around, delivering things. The pre or interwar Amazon, as it were. And what do you sort of, your eyes lock on this woman who is standing across the way from you, and she has kind of an exotic look to her. You would guess that she is mixed race. She has swarthy skin, dark hair, but brilliant green eyes. She looks like she's probably about maybe 22, your age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. But she seems to be staring directly at you. And would you give me a... Let's see here. Do you have a skill? I think either it's going to be a perception check unless there's a skill that applies to kind of judge reactions here. What do you...
Well, I have that empathy advantage.
Yes, you do. Let me roll that for... What's your will again?
It's versus IQ, which is 14.
14, nice, okay. All right. So you get... you look at this woman, and it's as if... There's a couple things that you pick up here, a few things. One, there is a look of intention from the way she's standing. Like she's been waiting for you to notice her. She knew that you would... Yeah, that that she would draw your attention, that you would notice her. There's a look of friendliness on her face as well too, as if there's some kind of greeting. And there's a strange sensation you get as well too, as you're looking to those vibrant green eyes, as if like the rest of the world kind of falls away, and all you hear is the muffled sounds of the Paris streets. And you also get the sensation of a warning, as if she's trying to communicate to you to take care. And then you hear in your mind. And this is normally something that does not come unbidden. I'm not sure you've ever experienced this before. You hear a woman's voice say, "He's coming." And at that, I need you to give me a will save, please. Not a will save, a will check. Okay, so what happens is there's this piercing pain that hits your head, like the worst headache that you could possibly imagine. Splitting, aura, you to the point where you would physically recoil from the sudden, painful sensation. But it doesn't cause any kind of like injury or anything like that, and you can choose to react however you want to that. Like, would you have given any any visible reaction to this, or
probably kind of flinched a little bit as it happened, at least, and maybe closed my eyes.
Yeah, so you flinch and you close your eyes, and when you open them, the sound of the Paris streets are back. The woman is gone, and you're sitting at your table. Two Gun, give me a perception check, please. So it'll be in the first tab, and you can just click. It's perception is a stat in GURPS. It's not a skill.
No modifier. And
So you just saw JSS, EA just stepped away from the table for a moment to go talk to the maitre d', and you just saw JSS kind of, twitch just a little bit. And he seems to be looking around in a little bit of confusion as well, too. Do you do anything with that, or you just kind of chalk it up to one of JSS's, strangeness since the war?
I would... I'd just, you okay? JSS? You're looking a bit out of it.
I think this is JSS pulls out his book and kind of flips through to a page and says, "Lady, 3 white leopards sat under a juniper tree in the cool of day, having fed to satiety on my legs, my heart, my liver, and that which had been contained in the hollow round of my skull." And that's his centering himself bit of poetry.
Yeah. Does he pull his book out and start scrabbling that down as well?
No, that's written down from somebody else. That's
Oh,
actually
okay.
T.S. Eliot.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool. So is that T.S.
It's from 1930, so it's
okay. I was gonna say, I was wondering if that was anachronistic. Look at that. Jeez, if there were hero
Yeah.
points in this game, you would absolutely get one. That's fucking great. So, Bob, you what do you call it? You look over. You know, he's been strange, been acting a little strange. Henry's a no-show, or Doc, as you call him, is a no-show. And you look over at EA. So EA, you have been pulled over by Paul, and he has 2 little pieces of paper in his hand that you notice now. And he says, Monsieur Blair, I apologize for this. Etienne took these before. They were delivered earlier this morning. They should have gone to you directly, but Etienne is a fool, as you know, and I'm sorry. And he hands these over to you. There are 2 telegraphs, or basically like this, I guess telegraphs that have been delivered to you.
Okay, I take them from him. Thank you.
So he said, please accept my apologies. I will rest assured he has been severely disciplined for this foolishly not bringing these to you immediately. It will not happen again.
Of course. Thank you.
May we
And
may we offer you another bottle for the table as a way of apologizing?
Yes, of course. I can't resist.
Of course. So he, and kind of calls Etienne over. Etienne's been your waiter, and so you've got these 2 notes in, 2 telegraphs. One of them is the. Trying to think here. 1 sec. Oh, and for those listening at home as well too, who may have a better knowledge of, or any knowledge of, actual Parisian things, this is an alternate universe, so all of my I have never been. I've lived in the UK, but I have never set foot in Paris, so I have no earthly idea. This is going to be the TV equivalent of accuracy for Paris. So.
Oh, it's 100% accurate alternative Paris.
Exactly, like, because I remember the atomic learning
simulationist.
So, what you hear. So what you see, EA, there are 2 dispatches. Well, there's actually probably a couple other ones too, but some of these are not consequential. They're, leads for stories or follow-ups from editors or things like that. Kind of like, all right. And then the 2 ones that are of interest to you is there is one that's actually from, Dr. Henry James.
Oh,
and
okay, I'll open that one immediately, yeah.
Okay. The note simply reads, staying at Le Maritz, looking forward to lunch.
Okay. Le Maritz.
And Le Maritz is... And again, for those listening at home who may speak French, I did take French in junior high and high school, and subsequently forgot all of it. So my apologies for butchering the French names and language. And the other is actually from a guy named Larry Dawkins. And Larry was another member of the Benjamin Franklin Brigade.
Larry Dawkins. Okay, what does his say?
Larry's says, EA, so in town for business. Hope we can meet up. Urgent opportunities. Would like to discuss. Signed, Larry Dawkins. And he is staying at the Hotel Ritz.
Hotel Ritz.
You haven't seen Larry since the what do you call it? Since the war either.
Hmm. I figure I'll have to look Larry up later. I'll go back to the table.
So let's get it. Let's actually do one thing here because we. So looking at your skills, EA, you've got a skill called Area Knowledge Paris.
Yeah.
What you could do is you could get in a sense of what those two hotels kind of how they compare. If you want to, you want to get an idea of like whether like one is really nice, one is really bad, one is really whatever.
So knowledge.
Area knowledge. And area knowledge for James and Arlen, area knowledge is one of those things that you can kind of set the scope you want for it. So if it could be something like a big, massive area, you might limit the amount of specific information the characters could get, or it could be something as small as like Hell's Kitchen, New York, right? And then they would know tons about the ins and outs of that place. And Jeff has kindly demonstrated what a critical success is. So I remember I mentioned before that a 3 or a 4 is always a success, but then once your skill gets to a certain level, you increase the range of that. You got a critical success. So what I'm going to say for that, Jeff, is that so the Hotel Ritz is the most expensive place. If Larry's coming here, for what you remember about Larry, Larry did come from like Connecticut money, and he sort of joined the army as kind of a maybe a way to piss off his family, maybe a way to pursue a girl. You're not sure. But he definitely, I mean, not to take anything away from him joining the fight and, going to Spain to fight, but, he definitely was a child of privilege going into that. That said, it is unusual. You didn't understand him to come from like Rockefeller money. So for him to be staying at the Hotel Ritz, he's definitely, made out well since the war. That's a very high-end place. And that's arguably the most expensive one you could be staying at. So that's not bad. Le Maritz, on the other hand, it is still a fine hotel, but is definitely not, it's definitely not in fashion, as it were. It is a place where you might want to stay if you're, being a little more inconspicuous.
Right.
It's not popular really amongst any of the set, as it were.
Shadier place.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily like it's sketchy. I mean, there are definitely hotels where you could stay like that in Paris, but it is really if you were to want to pick a place where no one would notice you coming and going because there would be no looky-loos hanging out in the restaurant or in the lobby or whatever, that might be a place to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
So, as you make your way back, you can see another bottle has been set on your table, and the JSS. How are you recovering from that headache incident?
I'm doing better now. I'm a little worried that it's gonna happen again, so I'm kind of a little bit cagey as I look around at people. But
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you give me let's say a perception check, please?
Perception. Oh, and it's a stat, not
It's
a
a stat,
skill.
yeah. So perception and will are both derived stats from your IQ, as health and your hit points is derived from your strength, and your fatigue is derived from your health. Success, nice. Okay. So what you actually notice is once that like the spike of pain kind of settles down, there's this really weird kind of like static that like I'm not sure how would you describe the empathic and the psychic connections that you have. How does JSS think of those?
Well, I think JSS thinks of them in terms of that it's a sort of he kind of feels that they're almost like radio style intrusions, almost like you leave the radio on and there's this sort of very light background static, and then sometimes there's a signal that comes in and it's
Yeah.
a clear noise that you didn't expect almost.
Yeah. Okay. So what they then play on that, you can hear like it's like a half-tuned station, but it's like it's to a channel that, if it is a language, you're not quite understanding it. So you can hear this, and it's definitely getting a little more, a little more pronounced, and you're looking around and trying to see, if there's that woman that's out there. What is? Oh, it's just exhausting, I think, is what what's the reading from this. So at that point, EA, you come back, and all of these guys know Larry as well as Doc or Henry. So what do you say?
Right. Well, I've received 2 telegrams, gentlemen. Henry is staying at Le Maurice, and I've also received a telegram from Larry Dawkins. I'm sure you remember him, and he would also like to meet with me here in Paris about some business.
Let's for fun, guys.
Intriguing.
Why don't you guys each give me a 3d6 roll? Let's figure out how you guys have reacted to Larry. Let's how much you liked Larry or disliked Larry. I think EA, we know that Larry is at least on friendly terms with you, but let's go ahead and see. 16. Yeah, very good. So you're EA, you're on very good terms with him. What I'm doing, guys, is I'm comparing it to the reaction table.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, EA, you definitely were on very good terms with Larry. You can decide and tell us why you think that he, as much as he's a kind of a rich ass, you still liked him. JSS 12 neutral. I think you could probably take or leave this guy. And a 9 is poor. So Two Gun Bob is unimpressed. You may make threats or demand a huge bribe before offering aid or something similar. I kind of had that as like headcanon before you guys rolled anyway, so that works out great. So what do you think?
I think he's a bit of a mouthy flash boy.
Yeah, yep. Absolutely. So how does it, I mean, it sounds like EA, are you pleased to hear from Larry then, or?
Yeah, and I'm definitely intrigued.
Okay. And what about you, JSS?
Like you said, pretty much neutral. He's, I like that he did his part in the fight against fascism, but aside from that, I'm not much of a fan.
Okay. And Bob, what do you say when you hear that Larry's in town?
Sheesh, we've got to spend time with that mouthy flash boy. He cut and run from Spain, and now he wants to turn up now. What's he fishing for? You boys are soft on him.
This is when
Seriously.
What are you gonna say, Joe?
Look, he's staying at. I said, look, he's staying at Hotel Ritz. The least we could do is meet with him there.
Well, if he's in the Ritz, he's buying us champagne. There's got to be something good coming out of this.
Exactly. We must take advantage.
Okay. And at that point, EA, you see a man dressed in kind of like the kind of like, classic, labor organizer thing, the worker's cap, overalls, kind of like a rough-made jacket, walking along with a, what do you call it? A kind of a bundle of documents under one arm, and walking next to him is a gray goon, dressed very much the same way that he is. And, which it has kind of a comical look to it, I guess, because it's this, small little, like, mini-me almost that is walking next to him. But he's walking to the table, and he as he makes his way up, he looks at all of you, and he looks at you, EA, because obviously your reputation precedes you. Mr. Blair, or Monsieur Blair.
Aldous, I presume?
Oui, monsieur. A pleasure to meet. And he gets up, and this is all happening in French as well, too. You guys all speak French to varying degrees. And he looks and he says, "Oh, I did not know that you had more colleagues joining us."
Well, we were here for another meeting, but it seems to have passed, and the gentleman did not show. So my friends are still here with me enjoying a lunch. You don't mind if they stay, do you? And I get the signal the waiter to bring some more chairs. Or well,
Okay.
I guess one more chair, right?
Yep. So he looks around, and actually, I don't know. Let's see. I'm gonna roll a reaction to see how he feels about the arrest. Okay. So he his face kind of scrunches up. He's probably about like maybe 24, 25. He's short. He's got kind of a mop of curly hair on top. He's got clean shaven. He looks at them and he says, "Well, I was led to believe that we would be meeting ourselves, that you were taking this seriously."
Of course I'm taking this seriously. These are my closest mates.
Okay. So why don't you give us a diplomacy? It sounds like you're trying to calm this guy down.
Yeah. Is it on the first page?
Under skills, the skills tab.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the skills tab will be different for each of you guys because you either have a skill or you can use stuff at default. All right. So so I mentioned before we went live, guys, that one of the ways we judge how good your success is how much under your roll was. That's an MOS, or a margin of success, of 5. So that's pretty good. The guy kind of looks around, and Arlen, what's your perception again?
My perception is 14.
14, okay. You can, for just a second, you hear this kind of like, on that thing that you, the sensation that you're hearing, that weird, station, as it were. And there's a split second where the guy kind of, his face tweaks and he says, "Very well," and he sits down. Now, you hadn't asked me whether you wanted to do an empathy.
Well, I was kind of thinking, is it possible to do empathy on the Grey Goonie guy?
Interesting. Okay, so the empathy. Let's take a look at the rules. Normally, the way it works is, like the neat thing about the GURPS system is you start with your baseline stuff, and you can choose to hyper specialize skills. So like, at default, there's like psychology human, psychology Grey Goon, psychology, whatever, talking dolphin, whatever specialty you want, and then you just suffer penalties. You take that and you default out. There's a pretty crazy chart that you can really lose yourself in. That's like 5 pages long. That shows you all the different kind of like defaults, how you, you can make skill checks for skills you don't have using other skills. So for this one, what I'd probably do is, because he's non-human, I might give you a fairly substantial penalty to it, but let's see. Your IQ is a 15, right? Or 14?
14.
14, all right. Yeah, these things are, this seems indistinguishable from other, goons. You guys can each decide how your characters feel about the Grey Goons in general. But it's as inscrutable of a face as what you see on that image between your characters there. It just kind of stares with those those blank white eyes sunk into those sockets. So he sits down and says, "Oh, very well, very well." You get your pad out, and then you begin your questioning. So. We don't have to role play through this if you don't want to. We can do so if you want. But basically,
I don't
like,
really have a set of questions made up, so it's
no,
probably
no.
better
So,
to-
I mean, the gist of it is that this guy is behind a, like, what they recognize is that there are millions of these, of the gray goons, or as he calls them, newcomers. And the newcomers are around the world, and they're basically being exploited. He sees this strictly in a kind of communist or not communist, but Marxist sort of framework where, like, even though these things are clearly sentient, although they are, seem to be willing participants in this, it's kind of a, opiate of the masses perspective on it, that, like, they just don't know. They don't know they're being exploited. Like, they do not live in neighborhoods that are with other, with humans. There's no, they live only in their own neighborhoods. They don't even seem to have their own culture. They seem to ape whatever culture is around them. That's it. But he feels that this is, that there is a higher imperative, and that by these things, his feeling is that by organizing these and by demanding better placement, these things will come to learn, and he introduces his, he calls him his brother, as Adam.
I don't think I
Okay.
need to roll classics to know that reference.
You're pretty good.
But just as a question about the world, have there been any of these gray goons that don't suffer from the mental issues that
No,
most of them seem to?
we're into the third generation of them, and still they don't. If you can think of about the level of initiative of, say, like a like what the presentation that like butlers or upper class servants would give. Imagine if that was all there was to the person.
Mm-hmm.
That there was no other deeper personal life, or at least no observable one. That's kind of it. The best that's been studied so far has been, efforts to try and uncover information from the ships themselves, and that's been difficult, as you can imagine. Has been difficult in a digital revolution society to try and figure out what the fuck is in a alien computer bank. Right?
Yeah.
Now, do we know something that these goonies made the ships, or were they cargo, or were they crew? Is there any idea about that?
Let's see here. I think that's probably. Why don't you just give me a raw intellect check, please, or IQ check? Yeah. Okay. So what because you're a curious sort there too, Gun. And actually, I lost your camera, James. Let me see if I can. I'll hit refresh here.
Oh,
Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone's back now. What you know is that these, like, from what everyone has released so far, like the goons are the only, or the gray goons are the only ones who ever operated these vessels. Everything inside is built to their scale. Everything seems to be, their strange 3-fingered hands. They're longer than humans. The longer than human hands. All of those seem to be, built to that order. There is a language that is spoken on that, but the goons don't seem to remember it any longer. So as far as you can tell, like the everything has been built for them, but it's not understood whether it was by them.
so assuming that an IQ of 12 means I'm not completely dumb.
No,
that
you're
would
quite.
suggest-
So an IQ of 10 is baseline human. Anything over like a 12 is clever.
Okay, so that makes you think, well, presumably they built these ships, so they can't be as daft as they appear, or originally weren't. There's something going on here. They're either smarter in a different way, or something's happened to them and they were originally smart.
That seems to be the prevailing theory, is that something must have happened to these things, and there's all sorts of theories as to what the cause may have been. degeneration of some kind, disease of some kind. That was a very popular theory when these things came out. When these things first arrived, is that once they realized that these things did not have or didn't appear to have the mental capacity to operate these vessels, there was that, there was the thought that, oh fuck, is this going to spread to us now?
Okay, so I guess being the guy who went and fought with the international brigades or the Benjamin Franklin Brigade, which I guess is similar, then I'm going to feel that the way these people are treated is probably not the way things should be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more of a nationalist outlook to enslave people, and as a Republican soldier, I'm not so comfortable with that.
Well,
I haven't thought it through fully, but
yeah, one of the things to contextualize the 30s, at least intellectually speaking, as well too, is like this is before Stalin, or before Stalin, the Stalinist purges and all the other bullshit. Before it was known, this is before the Cold War. This is before the Second World War, and this is the kind of like the kind of intellectual political curiosity that's being displayed in this time is what leads to people getting in trouble with the McCarthy hearings in 20 years, right? People joined communist organizations in the 30s, and then later they would find out they were members, and they're like, well, fuck, everyone was doing it at the time. Like, are you crazy? So the fact that you guys joined, and you're living in Libertine, Paris, that definitely could be that you are learning, like this is part of the, you sympathize with that sort of, Marxist, or that type of Marxist organization. And just like in the Spanish Civil War, there are tons of these things too, right? They've all got crazy long names. They've all got crazy, very agitated young men and women who are behind them as well. But this is genuinely the thing that it is of interest to you, or for you EAs, because this is the first time that anyone has advocated, at least on an organized basis, for like workers' rights for the goons. There's been precursors. You can kind of picture, not to trivialize the comparison here, but when they arrived, there was likely something akin to like the abolitionist movement to recognize them as sentients and as not animals,
Right.
So, but that's all stuff that's in the past. So that's what's of interest to us. And the thing that you draw from this kid is that there seems to be, they seem to be genuinely like trying to organize strikes with this as well too, as is often the way. And that's just crazy to think. Like, you grew up, EA, you were not necessarily a huge privilege, but you certainly were, you had some kind of privileged upbringing. Your parents would have had a Grey Goon servant of some kind or another. You've never known them to express anything, approaching independence. Like, they seem to be subservient and servile.
Right.
I'm not sure, JSS, where do you think your background was? Do you think you were coming from wealth or were you just seeing them as like laborers?
Not from enough wealth to have a servant, I don't think. So I think it's kind of like it's sympathetic, but it's a little bit looking down on them, because it's sort of like, well, they're not as kind of smart or capable, so it's not like they need us to take care of them, so it's good for them to be laborers. But it is a little bit of like, they're sort of, a little bit like children, in that we can kind of appreciate them, but we wouldn't want them in charge.
Yeah. Okay. What about Two Gun? I think you've given me the answer here too, but Two Gun's from Texas, incidentally.
He's from Texas. I envisioned him more from Massachusetts, funnily enough. But, okay. Irish from Boston. Father working as a gang.
Oh, sure,
manager.
yeah. His
so he was
real
running,
world inspiration is from Cross Plains, but
So his father was a pretty tough runner of work gangs.
Oh, so they're
Very successful, got
Yeah.
ahead, made some money. And Two Gun was his successful son, or smart son,
yeah.
but who didn't really fit in with that particularly brutal way of running business there. So he ended up
Wow.
joining the army and heading off, and then ending up in Spain. So he understands how labor unions work and
Yeah.
or lack of unions work,
Well, here's the
and he's
interesting
kind of rebelling against it.
the sort of interesting wrinkle to this is that there are likely, like, the Groons have been here for 40 or 50 years at this point, right? So it's not like these are new arrivals. But if your father was involved in organizing labor, there may be the perception that these things are taking, they're so eager to work any kind of job and compliant to work any kind of like low complexity job, that they could be seen as kind of the, like, you're taking our jobs kind of thing too. So your father may have had a very dim view of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I mean, that could also explain why you're more sympathetic towards them if you're rebelling against your father.
Yep.
Okay.
He's
Okay. So then, yeah. So I mean, EA, is there anything other that you want to know about?
Well, I just had it. So how do we communicate with them? Do they speak
Yeah. Oh yeah, they speak.
normally? Okay.
They speak in
So
this kind of like slightly high pitched flat effect.
Okay. So my line of questioning would have included stuff of like, is this your idea, or is this like, are they communicating, are you being told that this is something they're after? Like, is this you pushing your beliefs on them?
Okay.
Or your desires for their freedom,
Okay.
or is it something that they've expressed to you in your meetings with the goons and are a spokesman for them, kind of thing?
So what Adam kind of parrots back is, honestly, I mean, it seems like it's a lot of Marxist propaganda stuff. He tells you that we have only our chains to lose. We must unite. The newcomers of the world must unite.
Okay.
He seems, yeah, I mean,
I'm writing it all down. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, this is the level of enthusiasm and inflection you expect from Grey Goons. They don't really, they're not emotive. They're not demonstrative. They're
Right. He's not passionate about this.
No, they're usually compliant. Although, yeah, and you can't get, again, like, it's difficult with the goons because you can't really get a read off of them either. They all speak this way. You'd have a hard time distinguishing one's voice from another.
Right. Okay.
So,
Well, thank you for your time.
they nod, and you, what do you call it? So, I mean, assuming the afternoon kind of whiles away, you guys make your way through that second bottle of wine. And then, yeah, once you finish up with Macon, he agrees he's going to send you some more literature that you can review. Would you, let's see here, give me a...
Am I writing an article for a newspaper or something?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
You're writing that's what you're working on. Probably like a magazine, something with a little more substance to it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So then why don't you give me a perception check, please? Judge.
Is that on the skills again?
No,
or-
remember, perception is a stat. It's a derived stat from IQ. See, and for Arlen and James too, like the derived stats, you can actually gain points back from buying them down, or you can spend extra points to buy them up. So some of you guys, like Bob, you'll see I lowered his perception because he's willful and he's smart, but he's not. I didn't picture him as being particularly, keen-eyed. Whereas I think I bumped JSS's will up from his IQ. Okay. So EA, you, I mean, as you can obviously tell, this guy seems to think like Aldous is seeing you as part of the bourgeoisie, right? Like he sees you as part of the establishment effectively. He's trying to spin this in as favorable a way. And every time you try and ask him about, you know, like you had suggested, like, is this really what they want? Like, are they capable of having this kind of thing? Or are you driving them towards this?
Right.
He seems to be trying to spin it in as favorable a kind of manner as he can.
Yeah. Okay.
But you do think he's sincere, at least in his beliefs. So
So is he actually a communist?
he is a Marxist. He may be a communist as well. It's unclear. They seem to have kind of muddled. He's definitely part of like an international workers association. So whether that counts as a communist or Marxist or socialist is undecided.
Okay.
So it's probably like, let's see here, international newcomers.
Normally flag him as a communist.
In 20 years, yeah, he would definitely be flagged as a communist, for sure. So then, otherwise, you finish up your interview with him, and then he and Adam go on their way, leaving you guys behind. It's getting to late afternoon right now. You could go for another bite to eat, maybe, but I mean there are other matters that are pressing as well. What's the impression that Bob and JSS take from Adam and Aldous?
I think there's a sense of like JSS is sort of thinking, yeah, good for you trying to do the right thing, with a little tinge of kind of don't expect it to work out, because that's not the way that history tends to go.
Sure. How about Bob?
Bob's on board.
Okay. So Bob, anything? Does it give you any ideas for stories too? Because Bob is a pulp writer. That's how you support yourself.
Now, Bob's ideas are probably not saleable, certainly in the US. So does he sell mainly? He writes in English? For the US market?
He writes. Yeah, I mean, I'm picturing that one of the reasons why you and JSS know each other is you guys are part of a salon where you guys are a collection of writers, and you all happen to be selling stuff to US pulp mags. That's sort of how you've been supporting yourself, and then you may have other aims, like again, like serving as a soldier of fortune or something like that. Or a proper writer type writer, but that seems to be sort of how that pays the bills for sure.
Yeah, pulp pays better.
Oh, definitely, especially romanticizing your stories about the Spanish Civil War, or even more fantastical things. That definitely supports
it's
things.
giving me ideas of the unexpected goon hero.
Okay.
What can we do with that?
That would definitely be under the category of fiction, as far as most most writers would be. So as you're walking away, you guys, what happens now, guys? You finished your lunch. You finished your interview with Aldous Macon and Adam. What would you like to do? You can see those telegrams that are sitting next to your notes as well. EA.
I think that I would be more concerned about going by the Hotel Maurice to check on Henry, see if he's checked in, see what information we can get there, because he missed his meeting.
Okay.
Whereas with Larry, I don't even have a meeting set or anything yet, so.
Okay.
And we like Henry more than Larry.
You two do.
All right.
What about you, JSS?
Yeah, I think going and seeing the good doctor would be a good practice.
Okay. So you guys get up, and the you settle your tab with Paul at EA, and as you're doing that, two gun, you're kind of stretching yourself. You're sort of a man of action. So like a I don't know, like a cat or like a wrestler or boxer, kind of getting up ready to go towards something. You're loosening yourself up and kind of looking around. And Bob, you can't help but think that there's someone. There's a car at the end of the block, and you know what? I think that car, and these are at this period, there's two kinds of cars. There's either brand new, beautiful, like 30s style cars, or there are incredibly dilapidated vehicles from the early 20s. There aren't really, in between things. So, Bob, you sort of look across. That car's been sitting there. It's one of the newer cars, too. It's big, that boxy, but round kind of feature you see. The windows are rolled down, no doubt because of the heat. But you've seen smoke coming out of that vehicle, as if someone's sitting inside, smoking cigarette after cigarette after cigarette. You can't help but think, and now that the sun has gone down, the sun is at least lower in the sky and is maybe, behind, what do you call it, Notre Dame or some other, signature skyline feature. You can see that there is someone in there wearing tinted glasses and a fedora who seems to be looking in your direction. And I made a perception check for you, and you got a critical success. This thing is about, it's about a block away, maybe, like where the autos can actually travel. You get just the feeling that this thing's been watching you this whole time. What happens, Bob?
I think I've got to say to the other guys, what do you think? Looks kind of peculiar. Head on over.
Okay. If you'd say that, I guess like they don't see it. First off, you're the one who spotted this. So do you point out the vehicle to them? And you can see like EA right now, JSS is up and maybe like just doing last minute kind of changes to his some poetry that he was working on, and then EA is settling the bill with Paul.
So I'll say, boys, excuse me a minute. I've just got to see a man about a dog. Steps away from the table.
Okay.
And goes down the street a bit and then loops back around.
So he's trying to get in there sneakily, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So let's see here. There are where is your character sheet here? Now there are two different skills that sort of might apply here. Stealth is when you're trying to not be hidden. Shadowing is used when you're trying to follow someone without them knowing. But they can also default from each other. So let me see what. And I'm not really super concerned.
I don't seem to have shadow.
You have stealth. You do not have shadowing. No, I think that EA does because he would be used to following people around. But
well, I guess I'm overconfident, so I will just.
Oh no! That's what it means is that let's see here. What is your stealth rating?
13. 13.
Okay. So why don't you give me a stealth check, please?
Any modifier?
Give it a -2 modifier. Nice. Okay. So what do we see? What is Bob? He's going to disappear both from his friends and his. EA kind of turns around paying the bill and sees JSS finishing up with whatever he's doing, but Bob's gone. So Bob, what do you do here? What do we see in the film version of this?
So he nips down the street, goes down one metro entrance, goes underneath the street, back up the other metro entrance, by which point his hat, which he had been wearing, has been stuffed inside his jacket, and
Yeah.
he's pulled out a little pair of round black sunglasses.
Nice.
There's his little. So as he walks back up the street, not paying attention until he pulls up
Okay.
behind this car.
So you walk up to this vehicle, and no one has noticed you at all. There is a driver, there is a guy in the front seat, and there is one guy in the back seat who seems to be turned off in the direction away from you, looking towards where the cafe is. Each of the men are clean cut, nice suits, and they look. Well, here, let's do this. Why don't you give me a perception check? Let's see what you can kind of gather from these guys.
That's going to be a toughie.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so you look at this, and you know what? I mean, so again, like looking at the margin of success here, that's a MOS of 6, which is a pretty big deal. You would be, you know what soldiers look like, and these guys look like soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you also see the bulge, because you rolled well enough.
Okay.
There's a bulge
they're
of
packing
a gun underneath there as well, too, yeah.
Now, am I packing heat?
I think that being the man of action that you are, you have your Bowie knife on you, and you have your, what do you call it? You have your Goonie gun stuffed inside your lapel as well.
So is that a pistol size?
Yeah, it's basically, if you picture like a ray gun kind of thing, it's something that you salvaged from one of the what do you call it? I don't think they would have called themselves the Condor Legion because but I didn't have time to think of what the Germans would call them. But it's basically the Germans sent modified Goonie tech into there. So this is effectively, imagine like a ray gun Luger is kind of what this thing is. The Germans also had like basically tripod mecha that had similar kind of things that were sent in there. Do you guys have any suggestions for what the foot or the land forces equivalent of the Condor Legion would have been?
I'm just having a quick.
I don't know. No.
It doesn't really matter if you guys want to add something here. I haven't thought of a name for it yet, but whatever it is, that's what you've got. You've got this basically like ray gun Luger kind of thing stuck inside. So, what happens next? These men seem to be unfamiliar, or at least unaware that you're there.
Well, obviously this isn't smart, but being the overconfident,
Love it.
I simply open the street side door at the back,
Yep.
sit myself in the seat, pull out my Goonie gun and press it to the back of the seat in front of me
Okay.
with the
and
say, "Gentlemen,
all right.
it's
Let's
an amazing
do this.
jump."
I'm gonna we're gonna do a contested roll here. So it'll be a test of your dexterity versus their perception to see who acts out first here. I did roll pretty good for their perception. They're not great, but let's see here. Give me a dexterity test. Ooh.
Darn.
So, well, okay, you have luck, though. Once per hour, you guys can re-roll one roll.
Oh, I'm feeling lucky.
Okay. Let's try it again. Ooh, by 3. So I think you do then. All right, so now what it is we'll write the time. Well, actually, we only got an hour left in the session, so you're done for luck for now, Two Gun. But the rest of you guys do still have luck. So you get in there and sit down and do exactly what you said. The gun is placed against the back of the thing, and this guy spins around, and I think he's so shocked, he utters out, "Was ist das?" And then tries to correct himself and says in accented French, "What are you doing? Why are you in here? Get out of my vehicle.
Well, I hadn't been expecting to see any of you Adler boys here in Paris at this time. I didn't think you visited at this time of year.
I don't know what
So
you're
what are you
talking about.
doing?
Get out of here,
Boys,
crazy
boys.
Americana.
Boys, we're all soldiers here. So what's your great interest in myself and my friends? And Fritz in the front, no hijinks, huh?
Okay. That to me sounds definitely like intimidation. So why don't you give me an intimidation check, and I'm going to give you a plus 2 to the roll, because that is, you have the threat of imminent vaporization in hand here. Nice. MOS 5. So they say, and it's quite obvious they're lying. I don't know what, so say, you're crazy, we're not watching anyone. We have no interest in you or your friends. Oops.
Oh, both my friends you're not interested in? Nice detail, Fritz. Now, unless you want me to find out how one of your own ray guns works inside an enclosed space, tell me more.
There's
Why
nothing
are you
to tell.
here?
And I think you can see that the one, well, here, let's do this. Give me a perception check, will you?
Whoops. General.
And both EA and JSS, give me a perception. I'm assuming you're looking around trying to figure out, where the fuck is Bob?
Where he went.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I
yeah.
see.
So, Bob, the guy in the passenger seat is reaching into his lapel. And EA, you're looking around. Oh, where the hell? And let's see your JSS. Oh, wow. Holy shit, JSS. JSS, actually, so EA, you can't quite pick out where he is. JSS, you look over, and there's a car about a block away, and Bob is sitting in the back and quite angrily talking to some other man who's wearing sunglasses. And I think that, oh, and you told me to check your empathy, right? Oh, can't hear you. Sorry, you're muted.
That's why you couldn't hear it, is because I was muted.
Oh.
I'll do it every time.
Okay, so the guy that he's talking to, you are definitely picking up vibes of anger and surprise and fear.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's going on, I think you may have seen this, it's two guns diplomacy, as it were. So getting back into the car, and EA, you sort of walk up to the table at this point and say, all right, let's go. Where's Bob? And JSS sort of points over at the vehicle, and we're back in the car again. Bob, what are you doing?
So this guy's pulling his, getting something out of his
He seems
pocket?
to be he's slowly, like, you can picture, like, in the film version, he's sitting in there and kind of looking at you in the rearview mirror. A little bead of sweat's going down his brow, and he's slowly moving his hand inside the lapel of his suit to grab a gun.
And I move the pistol up from where it is in the back of the seat and press it hard against the back of his head, and I say, "You sure, Fritz? You really sure?"
Do you speak German? I can't remember if Two Gun does.
I sadly don't.
Oh, okay.
But I speak pistol.
Okay. So the guy in the back says in German, Oswald, fine. He says something else that clearly is, like, quit that, quit fucking around kind of stuff. And Oswald kind of looks down at the gun, knowing that would vaporize his head if it went off, and kind of, waits. And I think JSS, you could see that he's got his Goonie gun out and it's pressed against one of the driver's things. What are EA and JSS doing?
We should probably head over there.
Yeah,
Yay.
agreed. Strolling over towards the car.
Okay. Okay, so you guys start making your way over towards the car. Two Gun, what do you say next?
So, again, and my patience is running out here, Fritz. Why are you here, and who sent you?
And you hear from the front seat, The driver says something else in German that you don't understand, and Fritz kind of stops and looks back, and he sees JSS and EA making their way over towards the vehicle, and you see Fritz is a little panicked right now. And I need, let's do a contested dex check here. Ooh. 2-gun, give me a dex test. Or dex check, rather.
6 on a 13.
Nice. Holy shit. This guy's Fritz is lunging for your gun. He's trying to grab your arm, and he screams out something in, it's probably, Schnell, schnell! And he dives for the gun. Let's talk about initiative, guys. So, the way that you track initiative is basically we just go through the speed. If you click on your character sheet, click on your token, and then on your character sheet, there is a little thing called speed on there, I believe. Just so we can create a... See where the little clock is?
Oh,
On the right side? Yeah, click on that. Click on your token, then click on that, and it should add it to the turn order. Nice, and it did. Fucking nice one.
Wait, what? Oh, there.
Yeah.
Speed.
Awesome. Okay, and 2-gun. Did you click on your token first, James?
I did. Yeah, it says speed 6, but...
Didn't show up in the thing. That's okay. I'll add a...
Look on the little clock itself.
Yeah, it's showing in the... Oh, you wanted to send the result of this roll to the turn tracker, but no valid token was selected. Whatever that is.
That means that the token was not selected. That's okay. Here we go. Boom, boom. There we go. Okay. And between EA, I think EA and JSS, you guys have the same decks, so there's no... So you guys will have simultaneous actions. These guys have 5.25, so they'll be acting between 2-gun Bob and you guys. So remember that action in GURPS is a second by second. So things that happen... I mentioned this before you got on, James, but the action economy or the way turns work in GURPS is very different from other role-playing games. It is literally 1 second. We do a second-by-second tracking. So it's really... I sent you that cheat sheet that has the different maneuvers you can use for your actions. But, you can't accomplish in a GURPS round what you would in another one. It's a one Mississippi, thing. So, 2-gun. This guy's kind of he grabbed your arm, and you're going to be able to react faster than him. What are you doing?
So I simply, if I'm sitting facing him, facing the front, I will simply turn my pistol and pull it.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about firing guns in this.
In closed spaces.
In closed spaces, I'm not super concerned. I think I might give you a -1 to the overall attack. But what you can also do, 2-gun, is the rate of fire for your Goonie gun is 3, which means you can fire up to 3 shots. And basically what it does is you make your roll, and then we take your margin of success. If you get a success, you hit with 1. And then for each increment of the recoil, and the recoil on the Goonie gun is 1. So each additional 1 you roll, that's another hit. It's you kind of firing off a bunch of shots. So the Goonie gun is effectively unlimited in its ammo, so you're feel free to blaze away with as much as you want, but it is an extraordinarily powerful gun. Like, to give you context...
Well, 3d6 looks big.
Yeah, like a normal gun does, like a handgun normally does about 1d6, or maybe 1d6 with a modifier. So this is a huge amount. Plus, you'll notice it's got an armor piercing of 5. That means I divide the damage reduction that anything has by 5 before I apply your damage.
So I could be turning this into a cabriolet.
You could definitely... Yes. So, how many shots do you want to fire?
I think I'll just go for the 1.
Okay. And the modifier is your... See how there's a listing for bulk?
Yeah.
Because you're in close range, I'm going to apply that modifier, -2. So your modifier is -2, and then otherwise go ahead and make a roll. And I'll make a dodge roll for this, for Fritz. Nice. Okay, so that is... You would hit with all of them. Now, Fritz, unfortunately, he manages to get out of the way of one of them, so he kind of... And the first shot goes off. Give us a 3D... Or actually, just click on the damage dice. It should roll it for you. Okay, so JSS and EA, you're walking towards the vehicle. Then you hear this ooh, kind of like the signature hum of a Goonie weapon, and there's this beam shoots through the side of the door and like explodes this flower stand on the side. And zut alors! And French, pedestrians are all starting to scream and run. Your second shot does hit. Go ahead and, let's see here. Give me a, click on damage again. This one definitely hits him, so let's see how much.
Well, and it says skull damage times 4.
Yeah, so if it hits him in the skull, it does. So it doesn't automatically roll hit location, but you can roll that. Why don't you give me a 3d6 roll for hit location?
I was just going by the story of what he said. He had it pressed against his head.
So that would be that's a called shot if it's specifically there, and a 9. I think that's torso. Yeah, 9 is torso. However, go ahead and roll the second shot, please, and then give me another 3d6 roll, and let's see what how narratively this plays out. Okay, so the second one is to that, and then click on damage one more time.
And there we go.
8. Okay. Holy shit. Okay. So you did enough to, first off, it scours basically through his torso, vaporizing the entire thing, and then the next shot goes down, hits through his leg, completely vaporizing his right leg, and then part of the car as well, too. As it goes down. Now, I don't know enough about it, but are there any electronics in 30s vehicles? Like the
Not
starter,
normal ones.
like starter would be still there, right? Like that would still be an electronic component, right?
No, you might even
That's
have
just
to
an
crank
electrical
them.
circuit.
What's that, Jeff?
They might have still had a crank start in the 30s. I don't know.
For these ones, yeah, I don't know. Do you know, James?
I'd have thought it was a simple electrical switch, if anything, but nothing.
Okay, so I think that's
It's
actually
about
disrupted.
electronics.
The reason that's important is because your weapon has a surge feature. So when it hits the door, it kind of lightning kind of or electricity goes up and down the vehicle, and it blows out the starter on this thing. So yeah, this guy, he's he is very, very dead as like the remnants of the top part of his body sit down wet into the ground.
How very messy.
Other guys, what's his name? Oswald is drawing his gun. The driver is gonna try and start the vehicle. EA, what are you doing?
Approaching the vehicle towards the driver's side. I'm not sure how much I move in 1 second.
You move in. Let's see here. It'll be your move, not your speed. I think your move is a. Right, EA. Move is a 5, so you move 5 yards this second.
Okay.
So you kind of and JSS, what are you doing?
Following EA.
Okay, so you guys are scampering across. Doesn't concern you at all that this Goonie gun just went off?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how much I can actually see of the dead body, because that's what concerns me more. Is the
You see that Fritz, either slumps or falls down in his seat.
Yeah.
And I think the seat likely catches on fire as well, too. So then, back to Two Gun. What are you doing?
I will swing my pistol back round to the guy in front of me.
Yep.
And at the same time say, "Halt!"
Okay. So give me an intimidation check, please. Let's see. I'm going to resist that with his will. Okay. Ooh, okay. He's so. And which guy were you yelling at? Was it
The guy in front of me, the guy I previously had my
the driver?
pistol against the head. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's Oswald.
No, it's the passenger. I
Passenger,
guess.
okay. So yeah, he's trying to pull this thing out. He kind of stops. So for their turn, he is staying where he is. He's not drawing the pistol because he can see that thing on him. The driver throws the door open and throws himself out of the vehicle and onto the ground. EA, carrying on. I think it's going to take you guys. Let's see here, 5 yards is 15 feet. I think it'll take you a couple rounds to get there.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm approaching. Yeah.
JSS, keeping carrying on.
Yep.
You guys are also fighting a crowd of Parisian civilians who are rushing against them. Bob, what are you doing? The driver seems to have run out. What are you doing? You got your pistol on Oswald. Oswald seems to kind of...
I would just say, you just sit yourself comfortably while my friends catch your friend.
Okay. For this another round, he what do you call it? He's not doing anything. The other guy is scrambling along on all fours to try and get away from you guys. EA and JSS, unless you tell me otherwise, you're continuing on towards the place. Two gun. Give me a perception check, please. Yeah. This guy's about to grab your gun, too. You can see he's turning himself around, trying to be as slow as possible to try and throw you off.
Now, can I just smack him really hard in the back of the head with the pistol butt?
He's facing you right now, so you'd be smashing him in the front of the head. But yes, that is an absolutely pulpy thing to do, so let's do this. Now, normally targeting the head is a -5 for hitting in the face. But because you're sitting so fucking close to each other, I'll make it a -2.
Okay.
So give me a brawling check at -2, and I'll make a dodge check for him. Okay.
Brawling check. -2.
Nice. So he failed his dodge. So go ahead and click on the damage for your for your punch, and I'll add +2 to that. Nice. Okay, so it's 6 damage. Jesus, to the head. And, yeah, so the head damage, I'll multiply by 3. Let me make a health check for this guy. He goes back. At least a minion. So he is completely unconscious in the front seat. We'll fast forward a little bit here. EA and JSS, you'll be able to run over to the car. Two gun, do you do anything else? You knock this guy out.
Well, at that point, I will try and scramble out. Well, I'll have to scramble out my side of the car because due to the eviscerated corpse on the other side.
Yes, you get your suit quite dirty.
So I'll scramble out the other side and, as it were, try and get after the guy who is escaping.
Okay.
I don't know how.
Now, as soon as you come out of the vehicle, it seems that he's been waiting, and you hear for a split second that distinctive kind of warm-up sound you hear from a Goonie gun. He's going to try and shoot you. Now, he is a little ways down the street, so he is going to get a penalty for range, but let's see what he gets here. For defenses, you guys always get at least 1 defense. Unless you've taken an action that's like a full attack or something like that, where you've thrown all your effort into doing one thing, you will always get at least 1 defense against this. Okay, so that's a hit. Would you kindly, do you want to, well, I mean, you're not going to, so here's what normally your options would be. You could parry, you could block, you could dodge. If you dodge, you can also take other options. Dodge is normally, it's on the combat sheet. You just make your check against dodge. If you retreat, so you're like giving ground to try and get out of the way, that can give a penalty or a bonus to your dodge check. In addition, you can also throw yourself to the ground, which gives an even, dodge and drop is what I'm thinking of. Dodge and drop is, if you duck to the ground, you get +3 to your dodge check, and you can use fatigue to do feverish defense, which gives you spend 1 fatigue to get a +2 to a single active defense roll. So do you want to take advantage of any of those options, Two Gun, or do you just want to make your roll? Obviously, you don't want to get hit by this thing because you've seen what it does to Germans.
I'll do the dodge and retreat. So I will, as I step out, see that, I immediately spring back inside the vehicle.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So you get +3 to your dodge. Do you want to spend fatigue points as well?
Do which, sorry?
You can spend a fatigue point to get a +2.
Absolutely. I think now is a good moment to get tired.
Okay, so you get +5 to your roll. So go ahead and make your dodge check. Oh, close! Oh, God.
Whoa.
So
good thing I did that.
Yeah, you throw yourself back, and then, again, there's a hole that appears in the middle of the door where you were standing a moment ago. EA and JSS, you've just run up to the car at this point, too. So you kind of, whoa, duck to the ground. I'm picturing the street being very much like this, guys.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so he's gone running down he's probably like right near the end there, and that's where he fired his gun. He turns and you can hear clack, 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 the sound of his shoes on the pavement. Two Gun. Well, first off, EA and JSS, what happens as you guys run up to the car? What do you say?
What the hell's going on, Bob?
So I'm wondering if there's a way that I can use my mind probe ability as an offensive thing, because what it says is I can ask them a question. Is there a way that I can, like, not ask him a question, but kind of unsettle him to make his next shot more difficult with a mind probe?
So that's an interesting question. Before we went live, we were talking about how there is a talent, that you can get talents to boost the ability for your, for your powers, especially if you're playing more of a comic booky or whatever else type setting. What I will allow is, or what I will take advantage of is there are rules in the powers book, GURPS powers, that give you options for kind of improvising abilities. So let me take a look. Actually, also, GURPS Supers has some good rules for that too. Why don't we do this? So what I could do is, how many points are there in Mind Probe?
Points in Mind Probe?
Yeah. Mind Probe is 18 points because it cost you 2 fatigue points. The reason I'm asking is because I'm gonna take a look at innate attack and see what that gives me in terms of points. I think what I'll say is that, so you can make a will check, or an IQ rather, test. I'm gonna give it a -4, which is -1 for each amount of 5 to it. It's going to cost you double the normal, so it'll cost you 4 fatigue points to try this. And then you can go ahead and make your roll. You can spend up to 3 fatigue to bump up your attempt to kind of offset that penalty. So this would be a real, putting all your effort in. You could put 7 in total to make an attempt at this. And if you're successful, I'll just have it do like 1d6 psychic damage directly to this guy's brain.
Okay. I'm not going to spend any... Well, wait. What is spending the extra fatigue?
So
on
4
top
points
of
allows you to try this thing.
4 points to try.
Okay.
3 more.
3 more would give you +1 to each to the roll, so it would offset the -4 you're getting because you're trying something you've never, done before.
Okay. So yeah, let me just go ahead and spend all 7.
Okay. So it's so an IQ test -1.
IQ test -1.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh! Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. So even with the range penalty, what does this guy feel flood into his mind?
Well, this is pulpy Nazis, so surely this guy has done something awful as part of his membership within, the Nazi party. So he immediately he kind of hears, "What did you do?" inside his mind, and immediately cannot help but think of whatever horrible things that he has done in service of the party.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. We forgot one thing.
Mm.
Let's take a look at. Let's see here. Your disadvantage, combat paralysis.
Oh, right. We didn't do combat paralysis.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's just quickly rewind for a second, and why don't you give me a health check? Because I think like forcing this guy to think of something may trigger another one as well too, which will be interesting.
Health check.
Let's see. Oh, health roll. You did it already.
7.
Sorry. Yes. So no problem. So there's a moment where you kind of like panic and you go racing over, and as your mind reaches out and hits this guy, is there a self control roll for flashbacks?
There is no self-control roll for flashbacks,
What is it here?
at least listed on my sheet.
Okay, so here, I'm going to give you an opportunity. First off, that is a massive hit. So give me a... I think give me 2d6. Roll 2d6, please.
Only 3 points. Although, I'm kind of feeling lucky, though. I think
Nice,
I might
yep.
re-roll that and see
Go
if
ahead.
I can do better on 2d6.
Okay.
7
Oh,
points,
yeah.
that's better.
So he kind of staggers to the side, and let me see here. He so he staggers to the side, slams up against the wall, and kind of like, there's a brief moment where what you can see, JSS, is there's a link between your two minds, and you have this distinctive memory of a bunch of partisans kind of lined up against the wall, and this guy is one of the Condor Legion guys who kind of like and vaporizes the members of it, which will trigger your flashbacks. As this guy, his head slams against the wall, and he kind of and slides down, and there's this blood smear leading down the side of the wall. But where does this bring JSS? For what, you're also down past a third on your fatigue, so you're now, your move is halved, your dex is halved, you're just exhausted by this effort. What do we see?
So JSS kind of slumps down against the front of the car and is basically barely able to stand at this point, holding it as he's imagining. I think he's going back to one time they were, I don't know if it was fighting the Condor Legion themselves or just fighting the fascists, but they were basically completely surrounded and expected to be, that it was going to be either fight to the death or get taken prisoner and executed. And he is back in that moment in thinking about, this vision that he saw from inside the guy's head. That's what was going to happen if he hadn't gotten somehow.
Yeah, you see your face. Your face is one of the partisans that he's about to execute.
Yep.
And then there's a flash where you find yourself standing in front of a large glass tube that seems to be filled with liquid. And you can hear the rumbling of artillery hitting behind you. And you have a distinct recollection of looking up at this thing, and then something hits the inside of the glass, and now you're back in the streets. And you collapse to your knees. EA, what are you doing?
I'm surveying what's going on in the car here.
So, there is an absolute ruin. Oh, here, let's do this. Why don't you give me a fright check, please? Because you're coming across some pretty fucking awful stuff
absolutely.
here. Yeah. Nice. Yep. No problem at all. So you look in and you can picture the scorched remains of the, you've seen what Goonie weaponry can do to people before. So there's that in the chair. There's the hole in the door where Two Gun is you sort of slam yourself against the chair, against the back of the vehicle. And then there is I think he's slumped against the dashboard of the front of the vehicle is one of these guys.
He's dead, or is he?
He's got a pretty nasty contusion on the front of his head, but he doesn't look dead.
Okay, so is he conscious?
No, unconscious.
Okay.
And EA, why don't you give me a perception check again too, please? So let's see if you pick up the same. Yeah. So you can see from where the guy is lying, his suit has kind of like bunched open, and there's a gun inside there too, and you recognize the handle. Like this is German Goonie tech. And
I'll reach in and take that gun out of his pocket.
okay, so you reach in, you got the gun out of his pocket. And Two Gun, we're back at you. You've dived back inside, and then you, as soon as you sit back up, you look over and you see this guy far down probably like around here, like in one of the doorways. Whoopsies. There we go. He's slumped against, and his body is on the ground, and you're kind of looking around to see what else might have happened. And you might hear, is JS like panting or moaning or silent?
Yeah, I think moaning probably is just.
So, Two Gun, you can hear this moaning from the far side of the vehicle. So I think. Well,
have I seen JSS do this before?
That's what I was going to ask. Actually, I don't know. Has he let anyone else know what's happened to him? I think there's rumors about people coming back. There's rumors about people with, like, I guess first off, in this world, like, there's no such thing as superpowers or anything like that. But obviously, people are. There's stories of, like, Goonie tech fused with people. I mean, EA has examples of that in his hands. Has JSS let people know about that? It would be a completely unknown thing.
I don't think JSS has spoken about it directly, but he's definitely told his friends that there's something that happened to him out there, that he's been changed. And so I'm thinking that Two Gun Bob might think back to that and think, is this what he was referring to beyond just like basic PTSD?
Mm-hmm. So you see him down there, and you kind of look over, Bob, and boy, oh boy, like he's looking. Oh, go ahead.
JSS, what have you been up to? And I quickly sprint down the street to where this guy is collapsed in a heap.
Okay, so you get over there, and you don't need to. Oh, give me a first aid check, please. Let's see here. I'm going to give you a +2 to that roll as well, because it's pretty self-evident what's going on here.
Not +5.
Yeah, he's dead. This guy's, you sort of, his eyes are completely full of blood at this point.
Ooh, makes my Goonie gun seem, pretty run of the mill.
So,
okay, so I will whip up the guy's pistol that he's presumably dropped in front of himself.
Yes.
And stuff that in a pocket.
Okay.
And then stroll nonchalantly back up the street.
Let's see
as
here.
if nothing unusual had happened.
Yeah, I mean, the street is pretty much empty at this point too, and you can hear the wailing, or no, probably not quite yet, but soon you know that the gendarme will be called.
Then I will wander less nonchalantly at high speed back up the street.
Okay.
Towards JSS.
Okay. So, obviously, okay, so towards JSS. So you guys get there.
Yeah, well, say, and shout at the same time, EA, pick up that Fritz and let's get out of here.
Yeah, I'm pulling them out of the guy out of the car.
Okay. And then you, how are you going to get this guy out of here? This is
drag him, I guess.
It's a pulp adventure, so like you guys can feel free to, like, you're going to successfully do this. It's just a question of how we narratively describe it.
Yeah.
JSS needs some help.
Carry, probably.
Yeah, like
I think what we do is we have Two Gun Bob carry him, and we have EA Blair half carry me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got that. So you guys disappear down an alleyway. How do you because I think it'll be fun. How do you sort of transport him from here to wherever you want to go? You each will have some kind of flat you're living in or whatever. But
yeah,
I will. Well, shall we head back to mine? Who's nearest?
Well, that would probably be my knowledge of Paris to get us to the closest place.
Sure. Why don't you give us that's an awesome use of your skill. Give us a. Oh man. Yeah. So what do you think? You may have you probably got a friendly contact somewhere. There's maybe somewhere right nearby you could use.
Yeah, like someone that we know, someone I'm friends with, or someone who I know well enough who would take us in, and we could just,
Yeah.
duck in there. Absolutely.
Do they want like a baker shop or
Yeah,
something?
maybe a bakery or a butcher, one of the two.
Okay.
Just where I.
So you stagger in, and JSS, like mechanically, what you need is 10 minutes of rest to kind of get your, get at least one fatigue point back, and then you won't be suffering from the same penalties anymore. Actually, let me see, just check quickly and see if you actually need a minute of rest, or whether it's just it comes back automatically. I think it reduces if you're active. Okay. Reading, talking, and thinking are all fine. Walking around or anything more strenuous is not. So you're until you get there, you're not going to have a chance to kind of catch your breath. So what we see is like, there's a guy who is, it's inside this. You can picture like a glass-filled case or glass cases that are filled with all these wonderful baked goods inside. And this man behind, or a woman behind the till, hands off this, some like baguettes and some little box of dainties to this man. He says, "Oh, thank you," and he makes his way towards the door, and then the door sort of slams open. Here, like ding, 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 as EA staggers in with JSS nearly collapsing next to him, and the man kind of like, whoa, and then tries to go through, and then the door opens up, and we've got Two Gun Bob holding this guy up. Now, do you have him over your shoulder, or do you have him sort of like propped up as it like Weekend at Bernie's style? Oh, you're muted, James.
I have him sort of hooked under my arm. And I'm carrying him along, and as this guy comes out, says, "These Germans, they can't drink. What can I say? Getting you home."
Let me one quick reaction from this guy. Yeah, he looks at you, and you hear distinctly as he's walking out, "Americans," and he makes his way out. So you three come in, and do you have a name for this lady, Jeff?
I didn't have one.
Nope.
Betty.
Madame Betty.
Yeah.
Okay, so she turns around and she says, "So Monsieur Blair, and she kind of looks back and forth. JSS is just dripping in sweat. He's still kind of like he's rumpled at the best of times anyway, but all that stringy hair is hanging wet on him. He looks like death warmed over, and of course there's the unconscious German that Bob is carrying. So she kind of looks back and forth, and then looks at you as if waiting for an explanation.
Would I say it's a German soldier or what? Like, what would I don't know.
I think that because you rolled well enough, this will be someone who's like you can just say, "Look, I need to use the back room," or
right,
something
right,
like that.
okay, yeah. I'll just say important government business.
Ah, oui, monsieur. And she gestures to the back, and she sees that the lot of you kind of turn out, and then she carefully, she kind of walks out from behind the counter, looks back to where you guys are, looks down thoughtfully, walks over, and then turns the sign from ouvre to ferme. So,
Nice.
okay, so I need to take just a 2-second break to go to the washroom, guys. But let's talk about. I'll let you guys talk about strategy, about how you want to approach old Fritz.
So, EA will ask, what have you done? What were you talking to them about?
Well, I just I spotted them over the street paying excessive interest to us. So I thought I'd go along and have a chat.
Mm.
And it turns, once I got closer, I could see they were obviously military or something. These were heavies.
Yeah.
So, again, I decided to give them a chance to explain. They were very disagreeable, though, so things went south at that point.
Yes.
But
Well.
I thought it would be interesting to know, take one home and see what we could find from her.
Yes, for sure. I wonder.
I'm never quite comfortable with having the nationalist supporters chasing after us.
No.
So I don't know who these guys are. Mercenaries? SD? Gestapo? What?
Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so we are back in this room. Fritz is on a bunch of sacks of flour. And JSS, you sort of sit down next to him. Once you catch your breath, you'll be able to get your stamina or your fatigue back, as will you, Two Gun. So, what'd you guys come up with? What's sort of the approach here?
Well, we were just discussing what was going on. We haven't really had a chance, so we just found out who it was and what's been going on. I don't know that any of us are much for, torture or anything like that, so...
I think intimidation's about as far as we get, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
Although somebody seems to be able to make people's heads explode, so maybe there's another alternative there.
Well, eventually, if we can't get anywhere with intimidation or just smooth talking him, I could do my let me tell you guys about something special that I seem to be able to do nowadays.
Yes, I was about to say, before we go further, what the hell?
Yeah, you saw that, didn't you?
So here's what I'll tell you. We haven't seen it on camera yet, but you know that there was some event where JSS was exposed to German Goonie tech. And you thought he was going to die. And it wasn't like being shot with a gun or something like that. It was something very different. And ever since then, he has been very, very different. He was in a coma for months afterwards. But when he recovered in that Parisian hospital, he doesn't seem to have been the same psychologically or whatever else. This, from what Arlen, what you said, this may be the first time you've seen any evidence of that, having substantially changed him. So what the hell? That's what they said to you, JSS.
Yeah. Well, you remember, and ever since
JSS, can you give me a health check, please?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that you don't lose control, you don't suffer flashbacks or anything like that, but you are trembling like a leaf.
Yep.
Like, just talking about this, his whole body is trembling.
Somehow something happens to me, and it's like, imagine if everyone everywhere was broadcasting on the radio, and you were the only one with a receiver, and that's something like it.
What do you receive?
I receive the things that matter to them, the things that they're focused on and thinking about, and what sometimes I can even influence exactly what it is that I receive from them.
Bizarre. So you hear their thinking? Can you tell what I'm thinking now?
No, not not like that quite. It's more complicated than that. But the last German, I influenced him to think about executing horrible things that he did during the war in Spain, and it broke him.
You're telling me it did.
Two Gun, if nothing else, tells it how it is.
Yep.
So what happens next, guys?
Well,
You've got this unconscious German. You've got a missing adversary. I guess, Two Gun, do you want to bring the guys up to speed as to why you were in that vehicle in the first place?
Yeah, I did while you were on your
Oh,
break.
sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay. So you guys, yeah, know you were that these things seem to have been tracking you. Now,
So we're trying to figure out if it's SD, Gestapo, or some private organization.
Mm-hmm. Let me see here. EA, would you kindly give me a current affairs Western Europe check, please?
Western Europe.
Yeah, it's going to be a fairly tricky one, but you got a really good score in it, so let's see how. Okay. So you don't know. I mean, obviously, you know, the old paper hanger in Berlin, he has had, you know, designs, it seems, on expanding out, at least based on his rhetoric, expanding out to the rest of Europe. Germans always have had their eye on France, you know, dating back 100 years. And it's also rumored that there are different secret organizations and secret societies within his sphere of influence that are out. Some, you know, traditional espionage techniques, some exploring bizarre and exotic scientific / ethnographic / archaeological activities, and some exploring much more occult interests. He's said to have had, you know, a maddening interest in the most bizarre and unusual of sciences and secrets. So this could be any number of secret societies within the German, what is it? The Wehrmacht.
The Wehrmacht,
yeah, apparatus. The army, the German army.
Right.
And you know, 37 this is before the annexation of Austria. This is before the well before the Sudetenland. This is well before the invasion of Poland. Right now, Germany is a roiling cauldron of nationalism and populism, and there is a growing fear that, you know, what was thought to be the last war was just a precursor to an even greater and more terrifying war. EA, as a war correspondent and international news kind of correspondent, you know this very true. So the fact that Germans are here is not a surprise. Why they're following you?
And with these guys, you said they were part of the army, or they were part of the SS or something like that?
Not sure. He doesn't know quite enough. It's what EA could likely say is that it's any number of different organizations. So what do you guys think? This is a pulp setting, so like he's going to be unconscious until you need him to be awake. So.
Right.
Well, JSS, this is all kind of new to me, but you reckon you could figure out what this guy's thinking if we wake him up?
That's
I tried getting them to talk earlier, and as you see the results, it all got kind of explosive.
He twirls his Goonie gun as he says it, cowboy style.
I think it would be best if we tried our. It's maybe you could work on him first, and then if you need my help, we can.
I'll work on him, but don't blame me if the baguetterie goes up in smoke. The boulangerie, rather.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are in a we've said it's a place full of flour. Not for nothing, a lot of like cinematic explosives are using flour.
Mhm.
So it would be a really bad thing if the Goonie gun went off in here.
Right, so I guess it's time to go off to the sink, get a
Okay.
jug of water,
Let's do this.
and toss it over our friend.
Arlen, give me a d6 roll. Let's see how much time you guys spend before you get in there, because you're able to get one. So it's another 20 minutes. Go ahead and recover 2 more fatigue points.
Okay.
And you go in, you get your glass of water. Do you guys tie this guy to a chair or something like that, or like you take his tie off and like use that, or I'm not sure if there's rope necessarily kicking around here. You use his belt maybe. What are you thinking? Oh, you're muted, James.
So he's on the back. We'll haul him in the back anyway, where all the flour is.
Yep.
Plonk him on the floor, get some sacks of flour, and get them over his legs.
Great. So
So
between
he's going nowhere.
yeah, it's like so Two Gun will be on one side and EA and JSS will be on the other because you are much stronger than what they are. So he's down, and yeah. So then he, when he comes to and kind of like was ist los? Gott in Himmel! He's trying to pull himself out. What is he seeing as he comes to? His arms and legs secured by heavy bags of flour.
Well, I'm kneeling in front of him, and I've got my Goonie gun, and I've got his Goonie gun,
Yep.
and I'm saying, which one do you think, Fritz? Which one do you think? This one made a big mess of your friend, but I want to see how yours works. Or do you want to tell me where you're coming from?
Okay, go ahead and give me a intimidation check, and you can go ahead and take a +3 to that, because that's...
Oh, wow.
It's a margin of 7 then?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like the gun.
Okay. His eyes go wide, and I think just in seeing what you did to his ally before, it's kind of and starts jabbering away in German, and I think one of you guys actually speaks German.
I speak
German.
Okay, so both of you guys can understand it. What he's saying, he says, "It's Herr Müller. Herr Müller sent me here. It's him. I knew nothing. We were told to surveil you. That's all. It was the writer. Blair. He was sent a package. I don't know. Some archaeologist sent a package. That's all I know." And you guys all know Dr. Henry Jones is an archaeologist. I know nothing else. The name Mueller means nothing to you.
Okay.
Other than obviously being a German name. So, anything else you want to get out of him? He seems very keen on talking.
Yeah, no, Henry Jones, played by Harrison Ford.
Well, he's not Henry Jones Jr., so he'd have to be played by...
Oh, so he's Sean Connery. Well, we might ask him, who is this Mueller fellow?
Mueller, he's part of... And he kind of looks over at Two Gun, who literally is Two Gun Bob at this point.
Yeah.
He looks and he says, Mueller, he is part of the Annanerba. And I think, JSS, I think you got occultism, don't you?
I do have occultism.
Yeah, give me a roll on occultism, please. And I think everyone else just give me an IQ check. Raw IQ. We'll do it at default. Holy
I'm so good.
fucking good. All right, so you know what the Annanerba is. This is the special occult research branch of the SS. This is part of the Thule Society. that originated before the Nazis' rise to power. Heirs to Blavatsky, they are the very fucking worst. They want to use all the secrets of history and the classic period to spread the notions of Aryan purity across the globe and find the secrets of the lost Aryan past, or at least that's what they believe. I think you've also heard of Mueller. With a role that good, there's kind of a chill that goes through, and like Mueller he's said to have recovered, not only has he recovered a great deal of secrets from the past as well too. He's said to have been a veteran of the what do you call it? The Spanish Civil War as well, though he suffered injuries and was reconstructed as a result, substantially, as far as the rumor says. Some may even call him the Icen Man.
Ooh, Iron Man.
Because of how much was required. And it said that it's only because of the paper hanger's favor that he holds him is the reason they expended the resources to reconstruct him. If he is in Paris, not only does that mean there's something very big afoot, it also means that there's a very, very dangerous Nazi agent afoot in Paris who seems to have the name of your friend on his tongue.
Well, if the Iron Man's in town, then we've got a very stark choice ahead of us. We're going to have to support our friend.
What do you guys say? So what else happens here? Anything else you want to get from Oswald?
I think we need to get to the hotel as quickly as possible without saying anything about that in front of this dude.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what do we do with him? Is there a language that we all speak that's not French or German?
English.
Spanish, but he may speak Spanish if he's been in the Civil War.
Yeah, I think everyone has Spanish, just JSS is not great at it.
Yep. I have Latin, you uncultured nerds.
Okay.
Can you think of another way to communicate with each other without...
Well, I'm sure we've got like hand signals or something that we picked up during the war that we could...
Couldn't you guys just open one of your folios and write on it?
Oh, yeah, that...
Yeah, and Blair writes down, what are we going to do with this guy? I mean, I guess we've all killed people at this point.
You're all war veterans.
But it's a little different to...
JSS, give me another health check. Let's just see how... I just don't know, the prospect of... Yeah. I think what does the thought of killing this guy do to you?
Oh, it's pretty serious. I think I probably, excuse me, I have to go find a bucket to vomit in or something.
Okay, JSS, quite upset, kind of like bursts the door open and staggers out into the back alley behind the boulangerie, leaving you, EA, and Two Gun to stand over this guy. What are you following him, or are you?
Oh.
Well, I'm no fan. I'm no fan of these nationalist types, fascists generally. But I've got to draw the line at offing this guy in cold blood.
Okay, so you guys stand. I guess do you head out, or are you still communicating with EA in its written form?
That's kind of wordy for a written thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think you maybe the two of you guys follow JSS out into the alley. What do they find?
We're discussing,
yeah, what do you find in the alley when you're out there, JS? Did you actually?
Oh yeah, JSS actually on his hands and knees threw up basically, I don't know if we had any actual lunch at lunch. We seem to be drinking a lot of
Yeah.
wine, but not having a lot of food. But definitely the wine has come back up.
Yeah. And it's at this point too, like it's dark too, so like there's lights at the far end of the alley. I think that you guys, you're all standing out there too. You see that guy who left the boulangerie walk past, and he looks down the alleyway. He shakes his head. Americans, and keeps on going. And then Two Gun, I guess that's when you say what you had said, that I can't kill this guy.
Yeah.
Well, if Offingham's out, what are we going to do with him?
Now, do we have other members of the Benjamin Franklin Brigade in town?
I don't think in town, not ones that survived, unfortunately. That which was what made seeing, Henry or Dr. Jones and I mean, to be honest, even why you might contemplate meeting with Larry is because like there's so few of you guys that made it through.
Because I mean, we can't take him to the we can't turn him in at the police station, can we? What crime are we to accuse him of? With what evidence? And can't just take him to the hospital.
Could we?
Why not?
Well, we're gonna have him. He was, he's an agent of the enemy. We want him returning his information to his boss. To know that we're on to them.
Is this conversation happening in the alley, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so you help JSS to his feet again.
Well,
Two Gun.
as an interim thing, why don't we just get him to my apartment? We'll strap him to the bed, and that'll at least give us a day or so to figure things out while we get on with other business. It's not a permanent solution, but...
Okay. EA, JSS, what do you think?
That seems like a good enough solution for me.
Sure.
So you guys walk back into the boulangerie. Well, what do you call it? I think Madame Betty is kind of standing in the hallway leading back to that stockroom there too. She says, Monsieur Blair, is everything okay? I heard shouting.
Oh, very good. The government business is concluded. We'll be out of your hair.
You are always welcome here, monsieur. And
Thank
she
you.
turns and heads back to the front of the store. You guys open the stockroom, you walk in, and what you find is Oswald, his head turned to the side, his eyes lolled up towards heaven, and foam coming out of his mouth.
Ooh, he bit down on the old prussic acid, huh? Ah. Looks like he had his own code of honor then.
Yeah, he says, good riddance.
You know what? Hold on. I'm gonna because of this setting, you know what it is? There's a pile of ash. Where he once was. It's in the rough shape of a man, so you know that it was him, and there's scorch marks on the inside of the where the flower was, but there's not even a trace of a body there. I think with your role that was so good before JSS, you know that they use Goonie tech, like German modified Goonie tech for all sorts of things, and this is in particular, like, this is just one.
Well, could have even.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking could have even been remote triggered rather than be triggered by him. That they could have just like, especially if you go to Ash, that's like their, okay, clean up the missing, make sure that they can't say anything from. That'd be a very Nazi thing to do, to turn all your burn to death your missing in action guys.
Absolutely.
But it must cause recruitment problems, though.
So knowing that this guy's down, the others are there, the evening is falling, what is it you're going to do next? Is it Henry? Or Doc?
I guess it's Henry, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
So with you guys going to hail a cab in the evening Paris streets, our camera pans back over the now illuminated Eiffel Tower, and we'll see what happens with our stalwart heroes next time. So, guys, okay, so first, that's your first exposure to GURPS. So setting aside the story and whatever else too, what'd you guys think of the system? I know, Jeff, you've played before too, but what about Arlen?
It was good.
And, James, any thoughts?
I'm not sure if we were rolling really well or we just had characters doing stuff that we were mostly good at, but we succeeded at almost every roll.
Yeah.
Which was, I don't know if that's how it normally goes or not. But
well, think of it this way: for skills that you have a 15 in, the probability of success is 95.4%.
Okay, so yeah, it's about right.
Yeah. So, and then the things that were more challenging, like a 10 is only 50% chance of success, and then if you have penalties or whatnot that apply to that, it goes down from there. So your character is starting off, the point values that you guys were built with is a sort of like generic starting point, 150 points and 75 points of disadvantages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've got a 16 in pistols, so I'm pretty much a dead-eye shot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're pretty badass. And then if you you notice there is a stat called accuracy. That is added to it. If you spend an action aiming, you get to add your accuracy to the hit number. Now, the thing is, the penalties for range are pretty substantial, so you kind of have to aim in order to have reasonable chances or at a catastrophically good skill level. But it's pretty badass, especially up close.
I think what I would add to that, Arlen, is that we were kind of doing things we were good at, and it's a game that is suited to playing to your strengths. Things get very difficult when you start going, improvising, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Things get tricky quickly.
Yeah,
because does that mean you end up being a bit of a one-trick pony? And
well, and that's where the fatigue points come in. Is being able to use extra effort is a way of sort of allowing your guys to. That's not default rules. Those are really only for like heroic or cinematic mode, but allows you to still do that and draw on that resource to go outside your comfort zone.
Well, and then one-trick pony in the way that, like, yeah, if you're a doctor, you should be doing medicine if you want to have guaranteed success, but you might be able to be an amateur investigator or something. You're just not going to succeed on every single thing you do.
Totally.
You're going to fail sometimes. So that's the game plays, right? Is like the things you're good at, you're pretty much going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think for this setting, it works really well because you'd want to be pretty darn good at it. You don't want to be Indiana Jones, who's kind of okay at archaeology and average in whipping.
And it's where it comes into the contested areas is where those levels don't, they have more of an or less of a dramatic effect because you're actually like it's comparing margins of success to each other. So even if you've got a 15, if you're fighting someone or facing someone who's also got a 14 or 15, the chances of you succeeding against them is much more on par, which is what you'd expect. Two characters really good at the same thing would be more at a stalemate rather than one dominating another. Whereas facing like the minions that you guys did, those German minions, to let you know the context, most of them either had a 10 or an 11 in their respective skills or stats. Because they're minions. Okay. They're supposed to be less powerful than you guys. If you faced a comparable enemy, then they may be different.
No, for this adventure, I think the system worked really well. Everything that should have gone right went right.
Mm-hmm.
It all went all nicely. In this, you didn't want to be failing all the time and stumbling, and so I think it worked really well for this session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and another way to think of it is you want to try and find ways to use your one trick to succeed, so to speak, as well. Like, how can I apply medicine or whatever the thing may be, or how can I use my pistol to solve this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
as it were.
That's basically what I did in my one round of combat was to use my one psychic ability to deal damage instead of doing investigative stuff, and that I felt like that worked really well. I mean, it took some kind of tinkering with the rules to get it to work, but it was really cool to, you know, be just on the fly. Yep, that's a sort of special thing that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quick. And I have to say anyway, I cannot dislike a system which allows me a big F-off gun.
When I created the characters, honestly, this is how I sort of pictured them. Like, I wanted to make sure you guys had your pick of who you wanted to play, but you guys played who I thought you guys were going to play. So
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Cool. Any closing thoughts on GURPS before we call it a session?
It was interesting your discussion of the prioritizing the idea of a mechanical character. That's totally the way that Pendragon systems work.
Yeah, and it's
too.
The agency for the player is placed at the point where you make your character. You know, like
Yep.
you create a character to do that in the same way that, like, in OSR games, you sort of like push the players out and then we roll random stuff and we see how things go. It's a similar way where you construct your character, and that character, it should not feel like, oh God, why am I, you know, subject to whatever. You know, like you can feel free to make a character with no disadvantages at all, but you're not gonna have as many points to build your character with. So that's the offset with it. As if you don't, the more disadvantages you have, the more points you have to build your character, and also I think the more interesting your character becomes, because I mean, it gives some. It's fun to see your character act in suboptimal ways or ways that you would not intend. It makes for a much more interesting you know, play experience when like when you had your flashback, or when you had your, you know, we didn't roll for bad temper yet, but boy, we should have done that in the car, like that. See if your temper got the better of you and you sort of beating the shit out of.
Temper got the better of it. I just vaporized the guy. How much more bad temper do I need?
Yeah.
I'll take out the city block. I think because it's interesting, that one, because I've seen pushback on Mithras for their passions, and also somebody going on about Traveller and the fact that you roll the character and you don't get exactly who you want.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on who you are. I think some people absolutely detest it, and other people, like me, quite like the fact you get constrained by at least passions. I don't know how is it in GURPS. I think you could do it where you have to roll against the trait or passion or whatever you call it, and if you fail it,
EA has.
You can force through, but you take fatigue or strain or something.
Well, you can't force through, but EA has you could make use of, in the rules we're using, you could make use of your luck to make a second self-control roll. But like EA's got an obsession that's a short-term obsession with getting to the bottom of things. If he's on a story, he may get kind of really into that. So, you know, even when it may be, when there's a situation where pursuing that may be to the detriment of his safety or whatever, I can call for a self-control roll. You know, where he might be like, what are you doing? They're going to be back any minute. And he's like, just give me a second. I'm going to go in there. So you can build your characters to do that stuff, you know, to be that kind of character. And you can dial up, like, for all of you guys, anyone with a disadvantage that has a self-control roll, 12 is the default. You know, if you reduce it down to 9, you get more points. You can increase it up to, but you get less points for that. So you have a great deal of control over how your character is going to behave at the table. But there are point incentives. There's character generation incentives to building a character who is subject to more of his or her limitations, you know, or whatever, than just being able to do whatever the hell they want. And again, like, I totally agree. It is absolutely not the game for everyone. It is not the game for every setting. But like for the things that it does suit, and like this is precisely the kind of setting that I think GURPS does such a good job of, where it's just like, I'm gonna mash together some weirdo thing and then we're just gonna play it through. But I want it to have a relatively realistic tone to it. You know, I don't want to have.
I think it worked.
Well, I think it might be interesting for me just seeing how it worked. I like this setting and this story a lot, but it'd be interesting to see the kind of doing that sort of eternal champion thing that we talk about doing, where we take the characters and do like rebuild them in another setting.
Yep.
Do that still within GURPS so that it'd be relatively easy to port over, but to see like, you know, well, how does the system perform when the setting sensibilities are a little different?
Well, that's where like because of the setting, there's a whole host of books that deal with creating your own setting and creating different things, high tech, low tech, ultra tech. There are, no joke, at least 100 of these things that are put out. That have different settings that you can mix and mash, or mix and match, and it also depends on the amount of points you put in. Like you guys were built on 175 or 150 plus 75 points of disadvantages. Typical Dungeon Fantasy characters, I believe, are 250 plus 175 or 150 in disadvantages. So they get substantially more points to play with, which often means their stats are higher. So they're able to, do more things. And then the types of advantages that you make a decision of what advantages you want to incorporate. And it's dependent on the setting. Like the difficult thing with GURPS is setting the parameters, because you can build pretty much anything you want. You have to set what the sensibilities for your setting are. Like for instance, I didn't need to buy your ability, your mind control ability, with costing fatigue. I chose to because that made sense for the setting. I want you to have some psychic abilities you could use willy-nilly, but one that did actually require some effort and would have some it would have some cost, so you couldn't just do it over and over and over again. But if you spent the points, rules as written, there's nothing that would stop you from just spending the 20 or 40 points or whatever it was for Mind Probe, and you could just use it every time, like as much as you want. You dictate that by, what and how, I guess, how you freely you want to build your character. You can build pretty much anything in this with these rules too. It's just a decision of what's the setting and what's the, what are the sensibilities. And because I think GURPS does a good job of simulating good human like scale, slightly cinematic characters, I wanted to make sure that your first experience with it was that, or your current experience in your case, Jeff.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and the thing I like too is you're not chumps, right? Like there's not, because we're using 3d6, your characters are good at everything you're doing. You're much more likely to succeed at what you're doing than fail. And then if I play, like what I was doing too is sometimes you can apply penalties. Like normally the difficulty of a task is applied as a penalty to your skill roll. I was just instead using that to figure out what the margin of success you needed. So rather than telling you and constantly having modified the things, I know like if it's a pretty challenging thing, like learning the particulars of the Ananerba, that's a -5 or between -5 -9. Like it's a really hard thing, but then you made an amazing roll. Well, you made the margin of success that was necessary, and I just chose to interpret that as, okay, now you're getting way, way deep in there. So it's and as you say with improvising, to let you know how I built the thing, your innate attack I think is either 10 or 5 per point, but because it does psychic damage, it would cost probably double the amount for a regular innate attack, and that means it would buy you 2 dice of damage with an innate attack. So that's how I costed out the thing. It's like Champions or Hero in a way where like once you know the system and you know the cost of things, it's kind of easy to figure out.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a lot of fun. It was cool.
Oh, I'm glad you guys enjoyed.
Yeah, it's very good.
Neat setting, neat system, neat story. And it was good that it kind of, I think one of the things to talk about kind of alignment, you're talking about alignment of system and story, and the idea that we had stuff to do in the kind of downtime talkie sessions on our character sheet that wasn't just like, oh, we're right, because there's some games where they joke about the idea of a combat simulator, and if you've got a combat simulator game where you don't have anything to do in the talkie things off your character sheet, it can feel kind of loosey goosey in those scenes. But this definitely didn't feel like that. It felt like we had stuff to do, stuff to roll, stuff to think about.
Yeah, and like one of the things you guys did not get a chance to take advantage of was the contact groups as well. But the contact groups are basically like it's a way of accessing a skill you don't have. What the contact group is, you make a roll to see if you're able to be put in touch with somebody who has that thing, and then you set with how much it costs, what the effective skill is. So what you guys have is on a 12 or less, which is about I think it's 60%, about a 12 or less. Your contacts with your contact group, whatever the relative one is, if it makes sense from the context of who you're talking to, they could put you in touch with someone who has an effective skill of 12 in that, because of how I built the thing. So it's a great resource that helps that sort of like, non-combat part of the game have some mechanical structure to it. And Jeff made great use of the your skill too. To that's exactly what I was hoping you would do with area knowledge. Is start like like you say, exploiting the things that you've got to try and to try and get better. And I built each of the characters using templates as well too. So like a suggested kind of builds, and then you mix and match things from it. I think it was a writer, a journalist, and a soldier of fortune were the guys respectively. So. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, well, I had a fucking blast playing this. This was so much fun. And so much role-playing as well, too. Like, lots of great role-playing and so a good scrap as well, too.
For sure.
So, cool.
And I got to blow up a car.
You got to blow up a car and vaporize a German. Jeez. And you got to mind explode a German as well, too, Arlen. So that was great. All right. So then, I think we will call that a session then, guys. So for those listening at home, thank you so much for joining us for this exploration of GURPS in the Atomic Pulp setting. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the session, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section below. Or if you want to tell our players how awesome their role-playing was as these very loosely veiled versions of some of my favorite Pulp era writers, please don't hesitate to leave a comment showering praise on them. In addition, if you want to get in touch with me, you can also reach me on Twitter at Dungeon Musings. You can shoot me an email. My email address is dungeonmusings@gmail.com. And you can also find us on the Dungeon Musings Discord server. You can find a link to that in the description of the video. You can tell us about what we screwed up or what we didn't screw up or what you liked, what you didn't like, or just chat with us about this game or any other game that we're running. Or see if you want to join any games as well, too. That's all available on the Dungeon Musings Discord server where we are all lurking. In addition, there's a link in the description of the video to something called Heroes Save Villages. That is the charity fundraising campaign that we run on the channel. I don't monetize the channel in any other way. I don't run ads. I don't have a Patreon. If you are inclined to toss some livres in the direction of the channel, then please don't hesitate to click through on that link, learn a little more about the SOS Children's Villages International charity that benefits from the donations. All donations go directly to help them help the over 80,000 orphaned and abandoned children around the world that in over 130 countries who benefit from their services, which you can learn about at that link. I don't want anyone to feel obliged, of course, but if you are inclined to toss any financial support in the direction of the channel, that's the direction I would prefer that it goes. Last but not least, my brave post-war, mid-war, or what do you call it, or interwar period heroes, James, Jeff, and Arlen, thank you so much for taking the plunge into 1937 Paris. I had a lot of fun preparing this session and running the session. Thank you, guys.
No, thank you for running it. That was great.
Thanks.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Then,
Awesome.
Until next time, for those listening at home, thank you again for joining us. And until next time, happy gaming.